everybody? Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, December 17, 2024 Lawrence City Commission meeting. The first item on our agenda is to move into executive session. The action is to recess into executive session for approximately 20 minutes to discuss the possibility of acquiring real property in the city pursuant to the exception under KSA 75-4319B6 for the preliminary discussion of the acquisition of real property. The justification for the executive session is to keep the possible terms and conditions of the property acquisition confidential at this time. City Commission will resume its regular meeting in this City Commission room at approximately 5:22. Seem okay?
Yep.
Okay, is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
I'll second it.
I missed
Okay.
who did made the,
Amber.
Yeah,
Okay,
me.
thank
Sorry,
you.
Sherry.
that's all right, it's just,
Okay, all in favor, I guess, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We're back at about 5:22. Okay, motion to extend our executive session by 10 minutes, proposed by Commissioner Svinkeldie and second by Commissioner Littlejohn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes 3-0. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Is it 32?
Yep.
Sounds about right.
I think we got enough people to get back. We're back from our executive session. We have nothing to report, and we're going to recess until 5:45, which is the original meeting time.
Okay.
Ready.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and gavel meeting back in, and I'm going to ask Sherry to please provide us with the meeting participation rules.
Good evening, everyone. Please silence your cell phones to minimize distractions during the meeting. When the mayor calls for public comment, please approach the podium to indicate you wish to speak. Virtual participants should use the raise hand function to indicate they wish to speak. When prompted, please select Join as Panelist. There will be a brief delay as your role changes. Once your name is called, please unmute and turn on your camera to provide your comments. Please state your name and zip code before speaking. The city reserves the right to turn videos off or mute participants. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes. The primary format for accessing or participating in this meeting is in person at City Hall. Virtual access to view or participate in the meeting cannot be guaranteed, and the chat function will not be monitored. If you have any trouble, the meeting can be viewed on the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Sherry. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to item B, which is to approve the agenda. The City Commission reserves the right to amend, supplement, or reorder the agenda during the meeting. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as it stands?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion to approve and seconded by Commissioner Finkeldye, seconded by Commissioner Littlejohn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Next on the item, or the agenda, is the consent agenda, and the items on the consent agenda are considered under one motion and approved by one motion. Members of the governing body may remove items for separate discussion if desired. Members of the public may remove items identified as quasi-judicial for separate discussion if desired. Members of the public will be limited to 3 minutes for comments. Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Or is there an item anybody would like to be removed from the consent agenda, I should say? Anybody, there's no quasi-judicial items, correct?
No, don't believe
I
so.
didn't see any.
So I'd move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion by Vice Mayor Finkeldye, seconded by Commissioner Sellers. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes 5-0. All right, so I think we're going to move on to the regular agenda item. And the first agenda item is to consider approving a preferred site for the Lawrence Transit Downtown Station project. Who do I have to speak to that tonight?
Good evening. I'm Felice Laverne, the Interim Director of Transit. We'll get everything pulled up.
And please, that podium does raise if that makes it more convenient. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Tonight, I'll be walking you through the final site selection presentation for Downtown Station. Most of the slides here you've seen before, so I'll briefly review them with you. Let's see. This project aims to improve comfort and convenience of transit amenities to encourage more ridership today and into the future. There will be less significant improvements needed here than at Central Station. You can see the main features highlighted in yellow. They are driver restrooms, sawtooth bus bays, seating and wind protection, next departure signs, weather protection, and a security and information booth and staffing. Next, we'll review the project timeline. After a final site is selected, the KDOT-assisted NEPA process begins and is estimated to take at least 6 months. After those approvals, design and construction can proceed. At this time, the project completion target is Q3 of 2026. Here are the 2 sites evaluated for Downtown Station: Lot 9 on the west side of the 900 block of Vermont, and Lot 14 near the current bus transfer area in the 700 block of Vermont. As you can see, both lots are of a similar size. The project is proposed to spend around $400,000 in local transit sales tax dollars and leverage $1.6 million in federal funds. Now we'll look again at each site. These are draft configurations that will be refined through the design process and are subject to change. Again, the sites are around the same size and have similar project budgets. So what you're seeing here is Lot 9 in the 900 block of Vermont. Here's Lot 14 in the 700 block of Vermont. Because the sites are so similar, the land use and amenities surrounding each site are the major decision drivers. This table summarizes the pros and cons for each site. These categories are essentially a short list of the 14 criteria presented earlier this year, chosen to best differentiate the two final sites. We have Lot 14, the area near the current bus transfer location on the left of the table, and Lot 9 on the right. As the table indicates, both sites have pros and cons, with pros indicated by check marks and light blue squares. I'll walk you through each issue, but wanted to begin with the staff recommendation for Lot 14. Considering all factors, staff believes that rider accessibility and parking conditions present near Lot 14 outweigh challenges with traffic and parade impacts. Going back to the table, let's look at rider accessibility. Lot 14 has stronger amenities, including the Senior Resource Center, the library, the post office, and the Vermont Street parking garage. In our past survey efforts, riders have indicated a preference for close access to these amenities. Lot 9 does have some amenities like the Homeless Resource Center and Link Lunch. When it comes to traffic impacts, Lot 9 has minimal concerns. Both sites may need 2 curb cuts for safety and fire access. Lot 14 has some cons like parking garage traffic and pedestrian crossing habits, but we believe that these can be mitigated with the proposed crosswalk. Selecting this site would also have temporary impacts on our current bus transfer area. Next up is parking impacts. Here, Lot 14 has the stronger case because of the nearby Vermont Street garage. Based on parking data, the garage on average has available space to help offset losing spaces in Lot 14. Losing parking in Lot 9 would have an overall higher impact due to the limited capacity in nearby Lots 5 and 10. There is just less room in that area to absorb cars that would have parked in Lot 9. We'll move on to events and parade impacts. While Lot 9 has less impacts from parades and events, there is still the need to cross Mass at 6th, 7th, or 9th to get buses to East Lawrence. Though Lot 14 would see more impacts with events and potential street closures, this could be mitigated by design and continued collaboration with event staff. Because these impacts happen a few times a year, they were weighted less by staff. To recap, either site would meet the technical needs of this project. The sites are of similar size and budget. In recommending Lot 14, staff considered that traffic impacts and event and parade impacts can be mitigated through design and planning. When considering that rider amenities like the library and post office and proximity to parking garages are unlikely to change in the near future, those became the main drivers of our staff recommendation. I have one final slide with a timeline reminder, and then we can open up for any questions. So this evening, we're asking you all to vote on a final preferred site for downtown station. Once approved, we'll move forward with the NEPA process and then design and construction with a target completion date of Q3 of 2026. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to go back through any slides as needed for questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Commissioners, do you have any questions?
I have one quick one for Felice.
Please.
Mayor, Felice, under rider accessibility, you mentioned the amenities for Lot 14, but understanding buses will still pass by these amenities, correct? There will still be a stop that will stop somewhere near the post office, library, so no, we're not necessarily losing these amenities, it's just that the amenities are more, they're closer as far as accessibility, or I guess being able to access them quicker than
Yes.
because of the location. So they're not being lost, they're just, the access is a little bit, I don't know what the word is for it right now, but you're not losing it, you're just losing how you access the accessibility of it, so.
Of course, yeah.
Okay. I didn't want people to think that there wouldn't be any bus stops in that vicinity.
There will be bus stops downtown for sure. Our main hub will be where most passengers board and alight, but there will still be general access downtown.
Okay.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I had a quick question, just on the price difference between the two. Looks like there's a difference of $100,000, and I was just curious about why.
Because we're so early in the design process, we weren't putting much weight on those two differences. I think either one may come out the same or different than those. So we're not overly concerned about that in our decision-making process.
And so I think what I was trying to make sure you were trying to get at is there's more convergences of routes at those locations, so people could disembark, get off, go to those locations, and not have to get on a transfer to get to somewhere else, I guess is what you're trying to get at. It's more transit-friendly because you can walk immediately from disembarking the bus, correct? Is that what you're getting at?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So if the hub was at Lot 14, it would be a much quicker walk from where all of our routes are converging to those amenities.
Okay.
And if they were at Lot 9, most folks would disembark there, and then they'd walk the couple of blocks, likely.
Any other questions? Okay, questions from the public? Or please step forward.
Thomas Duggar, Lawrence, Kansas. Either way you do it, you lose parking. If you go ahead and take one of the two and put a parking garage there, you compensate and don't lose any parking. This is just a suggestion to think about.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Any other public comments?
I raise this up a little bit, just because it's fun. I just want to move this. Brad Allen, Lawrence Public Library Executive Director. We just wanted to just stop in and say that we really liked the analysis that was done. We didn't really expect the bus hub to continue to be at 7th and Vermont, but I have to say, like, when we looked at this plan, and I believe we sent some communication to the City Commission when you talked about this before, and when we looked at when we looked at these two spots, we definitely think that this makes a lot of sense as long as we make sure that safety is paramount on that block. You know, right now it is not safe. Years ago, we worked with Jessica Mortinger and other people to try to find a place, and the way the block is laid out with all the buses on the street, it's really dangerous. And so seeing this and making sure that we get some kind of raised crosswalk that makes sure that everybody is safe and that we've got all of the bus bays down in that lot, it makes a lot of sense to us. We really like the access to the library. We think it makes more sense. While there are some really good and valuable services down the block, like the community building and Link and a lot of things, we think this makes sense, and we really do like how it leverages the garage. For what is really important for us on the 700 block of Vermont is we spend a lot of time with our security team making sure that that street is safe, and we do our level best on our side. And seeing a security presence, we're hoping that security presence will make sure that people are safe at the hub and in the garage, because we get a lot of calls about the garage, and we've worked with and had some really good conversations initially with Brad Harrell and folks on the transit team. So we're hoping co-locating that will help have better security in the garage as well, since we'll have transit and parking there together. So, sorry, I forgot I'm on the shot clock here. So good, I got a minute left. But anyway, we just want to say that we support this, and that we're hoping that the library is able to have a piece in how we look and make sure that this all goes together and is very safe for the block. And that we're able to, not just for the library, but we really think that we need to leverage the lawn a lot more, not just for the library, and maybe even more so for the community than the library, and having events. And so making sure that we can reroute safely and successfully to be able to make that a premier destination, that lawn, is really important to us. So we just hope that we can have good exchange with the city as we move forward. So library, if it means anything to you, like we really like this, and we support it. Thank you.
Brad? Any other public comment in the room? Sherry, is there any waiting online? There is not. Okay. No public comment online. We're finished in the room. Commissioners, comments, questions?
Well, it's, I would probably say, given, what Brad was able to say and, kind of the presentation given, I would definitely lean a little bit more towards 14. Felice, I'm not sure, or Brad, have there, also speaking to what Brad said a little bit, in terms of a security presence, was the one outlined deemed adequate, or will that be fleshed out later in the decision making, or is it just kind of? I just want to know what the process is for that.
Yes, we're already starting the budget process, and we've got kind of a customer service / security presence already worked into the budget, and we'll continue to evaluate what the full staffing needs to be, but there would be security, customer service staff there for the full time that downtown station is open.
Okay.
Maybe like a kiosk or?
Yes, yes. So in the design, there's a place where they can, have shelter from the elements as well and have an all-day presence there.
Okay.
And they won't be just limited to just the bus station. They could potentially go, over to the garage as well, or or they be just? I just want to know is the extent of their area, if they need to be.
I think we're very open to discussion about how to make the 700 block of Vermont as safe as it can be. So we're open to talk with the library and anyone else, and parking as well.
Okay.
Great.
Felicia, in the design on page 5 of the packet, in the PowerPoint presentation, the stainless steel loo that's pictured, is that conceptually what you're thinking about? Is that exactly what you're,
For the restroom,
for the restroom?
this was just a concept. I think
Okay.
we'll flesh that out in design.
Okay. I was just curious, 'cause I know with this particular picture, when this requires access to sewer lines, I didn't know if that had been discussed or, so just curious, wanted to know that would be a factor, and we didn't hear anything about it, so I wanted to make sure we weren't catching ourselves off guard with that.
Sure, we anticipate it should be open all times of the year for bus operators to access it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Guess I just say I appreciate the process that we've been through, and it's taken a while, but it's been a good process, and the fact that we're here and we had 2 speakers, I think speaks well for the entire process. And I'll go ahead and support the recommendation of Lot 14, but glad we got here. It's been a long time coming, but it's a good process. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, Felicia. Okay, so any other comments before we vote, or do you want to, anybody have any concerns about 14 or recommendation?
No, I'm fine with staff's recommendation. I think
Great.
this is where we're at. Like I said, it's been a while getting here, so let's
Okay.
get her done.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, is there a motion then?
I don't think there's a,
Move to approve Lot 14 as the preferred site for the Lawrence Transit Downtown Station project.
Second.
Okay, motion by Vice Mayor Finkeldye, seconded, excuse me. Sorry, I have a frog in my throat. By Commissioner Larson, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those
Nay.
opposed? Oh, nay?
nay.
Okay, those opposed, 1. Motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Sellers in the negative. Okay. The next item on the agenda is to consider accepting an application from the University of Kansas for Phase 2 of the Gateway District project to finance renovations to the south and east portions of the David Booth Memorial Football Stadium.
You okay?
Through establishment of a tax increment financing district, or TIF, a community improvement district, CID,
Good.
and the issuance of sales tax and revenue bonds, STAR bonds, and consider authorizing the city manager to execute a funding agreement with the University of Kansas to pay the city's expenses associated with the evaluation of the application.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioners, tonight, as you've outlined, is the consideration of an application, not the approval of the actual application, but the receipt of the application so that we can begin the process of negotiation and the due diligence process to consider what is being proposed by University of Kansas. This also contains a reimbursement agreement so that we have appropriate funds and resources to go through the thorough evaluation of this using our consulting team. And tonight, Jeff DeWitt, the CFO for University of Kansas, is going to run through their proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, and thank you for seeing us tonight to consider this, what we consider one of the most important projects that we can do in the university. And do I just use the mouse here to run this? I got all these. There you go. Okay. All right, thank you. So what you see on the screen is, again, I'm Jeff DeWitt. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the university. I've been with the university for 4 years. Prior to that, I was the Chief Financial Officer for Washington, D.C., and prior to that, I was the Chief Financial Officer for the City of Phoenix. So I've been involved in projects like this throughout my career, and I'll bring some of that perspective to this particular project. What you see, and I'll run through this fairly quickly, about 20 minutes, give time to kind of give you a high level, and then get into any questions and discussion you'd like to have. What you can see in this picture, this is the developer's rendition of what this project will look like when completed. If you look at the top of the picture, you'll see what is the west side of the stadium that you can see under construction right now. And to the right of it, you'll see the north side of the stadium, which is where the conference center is on the back end of this. So phase one is the west side, the north side, with the conference center. That conference center was funded by state funds, which is $85 million of ARPA funds that came from the COVID era, $50 million of a challenge grant from the Department of Commerce, $35 million of state appropriations. So the state of Kansas provided the funding to build a 55,000 gross square foot conference center. That will be built and be open by August of the coming year. We'll have graduation there in May. The thing will be open for full use in August of 2025. What the developer is proposing is that vacant parking lot, which I'll show you a picture in a minute, that's to the east of this, which is to put 2 levels of underground parking, which I'll show you, and this is the parking entrance right down here in the front. And on top of that would be this 20,000 square foot plaza for community events that would go in with the stadium, a 162 room with 16 condos on top of it, Marriott brand hotel. It's a Cascade brand type that you'll see at the plaza in Kansas City, if you want to see what the fit and finish looks like. 443 beds of apartments style for students. So student housing is the brown area. So you have, and then you have retail and office and restaurant on the lower levels of these buildings, about 43,000 square feet. So this is the development that has been proposed by the developer. As part of this whole project, we have engaged and are working under contract with the Oakview Group, which is one of the premier conference and events entities in the world. They run 400 venues across the world. They own the Moody Center at the University of Texas, and they lease that out to the men and women's basketball team, and they have events there very regularly. And they also are the operator of McCormick Place, which is a convention center in Chicago, one of the largest, it is probably the largest convention center in North America. So they are, as we call it, the big dog of conference and events, is our partner in all this, and they're a driver of making this thing successful. So the stadium will be built, the conference center will be built, but to make this all work, the development is really necessary to get full economic impact out of this, and I'll walk you through that in a minute. Their comment is, if you finish with phase one and you leave that parking lot vacant, and you don't do all these things to activate the stadium, activate the conference center, it'll be running at about half its economic output potential. So you get about half as much impact to the community, to the university, the revenue that comes in, if you don't do phase two, which is, again, what we had planned at some point, and this is a public-private partnership that we're looking for assistance on. The chancellor's comments at the bottom, this is a once-in-a-generation project to transform our campus and drive economic development throughout the region. That's for the city, the state, the county, and for the university. And I'll go through these fairly quickly. This is, again, what I just mentioned. This is phase one, the west side, the north side, the conference center, and the Anderson Family Complex, which is football operations, will be open in August 25. And this is what will look like roughly a year from, 8 months from now. But that parking lot would be vacant there, or would be a parking lot, not the development that we're proposing. This is quickly what I just mentioned. This shows you what phase 2 is. Edgemore Sunflower, which I'll talk about more in just a minute. This is their proposal, the hotel, student housing, retail, parking. And one of the critical elements, we met with a neighborhood group yesterday. We met with downtown business owners. And obviously one of the biggest concerns that always comes up is parking. We're going to be replacing 361 spaces we've lost with 1,000 plus spaces, which is the underground parking you see right here, as well as a parking, surface parking lot, which would be north of the stadium. In addition to that, there's that 20,000 square feet of programmable event space, which would be a community asset. It'd be kind of a park inside the development that you could have City of Lawrence events, university events that would complement the assets that are in the stadium. So this activates the host site with student activity, hotel, plaza, and then the stadium and the conference center itself. We did a lot of work before I dare stand up here and speak to you, because I've been on the other side of this my whole career as a CFO of a city, and knowing the things that you look at and want to consider when you get a developer proposal. We had Hunden Partners come in with us at the beginning and do an evaluation of, is this even feasible? If you build a stadium and you build this conference center, will anybody come and work with you? Can you get a private development to come in? What can they do? What will they need? We did that study before we did a request for proposal. That drove our request for proposal, which we got 3 submittals from developers. And the first level of submittals were not adequate. They weren't going to work. They didn't provide the parking. They didn't provide the hotel of the size. We didn't even know what the hotel might be. And there was just a whole lot of shortfalls in the first proposals. So we had extensive discussions with the 3 developers, said, this isn't going to work. We'll start over, or you can come back and take a second try. They all came back, and they greatly, greatly improved. And we ended up selecting what we consider the best one, which you'll see, you saw the rendering of that a minute ago. And we're under exclusive negotiation agreement with them right now, pending that we can come to agreement of terms and pending the funding requirements can be met. We then did a lot of research for probably about 3 months on whether the tools they were suggesting, STAR bonds, tax increment financing, community improvement districts, I'm going to speak about in a second, whether those were feasible or not, and whether they would fill the gap to make this project work. And then, before coming to you, because I know you'll do a study after this, we had Hunden come in again. And by the way, Hunden is one of the 6 firms that the Department of Commerce uses, and when they're evaluating STAR bonds that they've done all over the state. So they're one of their firms. We had them pull all the data together. I reviewed it extensively. Are the assumptions right? Can a hotel really operate that way? Are the room rates right? Could students afford to live there? Is the parking adequate? How's it going to work? All that got evaluated. And then what you're going to see is the results of that. And we did that before we came to you. So this is unusual when you have a developer come forward with this. We're coming forward as a university, and this has to be a partnership. So we want you to see the data we have, look at it, and then if there's differences, we'll obviously be able to discuss it. The developer we picked was Edgemore Sunflower, and I just got an article in the mail today that they just won an award in New York. It's called a Public-Private Partnership Conference for the Kansas City Airport and a business school building that is on the University of Nevada, Reno. They won 2 awards at this particular conference. And so they have, they're a top developer. Again, they did the Kansas City Airport, and I think many people would say that thing's working pretty well. It's a very, very nice airport to go through. They've actually did the Central District at the university, so we have experience with them for almost a decade. That project has been very reliable, very resilient, and the operations has been very well on that. They've got experience in hotels and universities. They've done athletic facilities. And probably an important element, when you look at the picture on the bottom left-hand side, I guess we have a really good school of architecture and engineering because they have a lot of graduates that work at these firms. So they care about this project beyond just a developer coming in to do it. They have their reputation, and they have a lot of alumni that want to see this be successful. So I'm excited and confident in this project for really 2 reasons. We have the right convention and events partner. We have one of the top, probably the top firm in the country there. And we have a quality developer that's done a project like the Kansas City Airport that has been very successful. Those things you need, as well as partnerships with a city, with the community, and with the business community. If you get all that, then these projects do work, and they work well. Just real quickly, what are the economic benefits? This is the new entrance to the university, and you'll see a picture of that in just a minute. And this is really more critical than ever. An article came out in what's called Inside Higher Ed this morning, and it said that next year is going to be peak enrollment, peak graduation, peak students that are 18 years old ready to go to college. But after that, over the next 15 years, you'll see a 13% decline nationwide in college-going age students. It'll be 16% in the Midwest. Illinois will have a 32% drop over the next 15 years in terms of people that are of the age to go to college. And Illinois is one of our major recruiting entities. So you have to up your game to get that smaller pie and do these. And a Gateway project, as well as a whole lot of other things we got going on at the university, are critical to keeping that enrollment at the level it is now and not falling off what's called the demographic cliff for higher ed. So if you're doing what you're always doing, you're going to have a really, really hard time as any university that doesn't adapt to what's coming in the next few years, starting after next year. And so this gives you an economic center to complement Mass Street. And we talked to the business committee last, I think it was Thursday or Friday, to talk about how maybe that could happen. A fully functioning conference center that's got all the assets it needs to work, hotel, student housing. We have record enrollment the last 3 years in a row. And we got total record enrollment at the university right now. We need to build 1,000 beds somewhere on the campus in the next 2 to 3 years. And tomorrow, I'm going to the Board of Regents, they're meeting tomorrow, and we're asking second read for $100 million of authority to borrow to finance student housing. So and that has to be approved by the state. So we're committed to, this is 45% of the solution, a little less than 45%. We got to figure out the other piece, and we're committed to going to the state to get authority to actually figure out how to fix the other part of the housing, which is almost 600 more beds. And then parking, obviously, this provides a parking solution as well. Cultural-wise, this is sporting, concert, entertainment options. This is my favorite photo. This is, you're walking in, this is the first place you drive up as you're going to park in Mississippi Garage to go up to the Welcome Center. And you're going to see the Campanile through this corridor. It's being designed that way. You're going to see the Campanile that 4 years later, if you go to college here, which we hope you would, you'll walk through that Campanile down into that same facility to graduate. So this is an iconic, this is built to be uniquely Lawrence, uniquely Kansas, uniquely KU. View of the Campanile is preserved. World War I Memorial, working with the World War I Museum in Kansas City, is going to be enhanced. You got student housing, retail that students need and the community needs nearby, a plaza. Again, it's the first thing you're going to see, and that's really, really important in terms of this recruiting challenges we're going to have going forward. Phase 1 had a lot of partners. Phase 1's been a challenging project. Phase 2 will need more partners. Endowment, $248 million of fundraising. In athletics, using the incremental revenue of Phase 1, $150 million in debt financing. University of Kansas doing vision oversight, procurement. The state has put in, as I mentioned earlier, $85 million. There would not be a conference center in this particular development if the state wasn't able to step in and help with that. And we want to make sure it hits its full economic potential as well. Phase 2, we need more partnerships. Endowment needs to raise a little less than $100 million more. Athletics needs to align. University of Kansas, the same role. Department of Commerce has to approve STAR bonds too. Even if you were to agree that you thought that was a good idea, Department of Commerce has to agree as well. So both the state and the local jurisdiction have to agree on STAR bonds. And then the developers putting in debt and equity, about 60% debt, 40% equity is what they're putting into this particular project to make it work, which is the hotel and the apartments largely. And then we're asking for your assistance on these economic development tools that can help get this over the finish line to make it work. The 3 tools that you talked about at the beginning, Mr. Chairman, was that we're looking at is tax increment financing, community improvement districts, and STAR bonds, and IRBs, which are tax exemption on construction materials when you're building. A lot of the construction sales tax is related to the state sales tax. That's another tool we're looking for. And this is to build a public infrastructure so the private sector can happen. So in public-private partnerships is what does the public need to do so the private sector can come in and do the project. And that's what these tools are about. I'll do this very quickly. And people have seen STAR bonds in the news. The Legends is a classic project that it takes the net new revenue, sales tax revenue from the state, the city, and a portion of the county, and it allows you to take that revenue and make that as a revenue source to sell bonds to the public that then helps you fund the project. So that's the cash flow that you get, and it's only that net new. The base stays with the city, and this is the net new. Tax increment financing is the net new property taxes. That parking lot is currently state property, university property, and can't be subject to sales tax. We're going to put it in a situation because a private developer is going to build on it where it's in the property tax base of the city. That property tax, some of that property tax increment will go to tax increment financing to help issue bonds for that. The school district part has to stay with the school districts. And then when it's paid off, the entire thing is in the property tax base for the city forevermore, and you get property taxes on that as well. And community improvement districts are where you add additional 1.5% sales tax in the district, and that revenue source is used to finance the project. What else do you need to know about STAR bonds? The base year taxes are retained, so whatever is occurring now, you continue to get that. A portion of the taxes remain with the city, county, and state. The 1.55% city sales tax, the 1% is what goes to the STAR bonds. The 0.55, which is affordable housing, your public infrastructure, those other dedicated taxes, you get all those the whole time. They do not get dedicated to the STAR bond district. Again, the incremental revenues have to meet statutory requirements, and typically that's a multi-purpose stadium. This is both soccer and football and other venues or entertainment areas. And then once they're paid off, the full increment goes forward. And in the unlikely event there's a default, and I'll explain why I think that's unlikely in a minute, based on how we're doing this, is there's no financial risk to the city, county, state, or the university. The people who buy the bonds, that bet on the project, that bet on that flow of that net new revenue, they're the ones that take the risk. So you gotta make sure you're doing it in a way they want to buy it, they feel comfortable to get paid off, and it's got to be a quality project. What are the benefits of this? And what we had is Hunden do analysis, and you'll have this same look, and the state will have the same look. What is the net new revenue that this will generate to the community? And what is the net new revenue from people who have a job, they get a paycheck, they spend money, that's directly and indirectly. So anything they do and they spend, maybe that creates another job. That net impact is 1.4 billion with a B, and direct impact and 550 million and indirect impact, which is almost $2 billion. So rounding that up, 2 billion divided by 20, that's roughly 100 billion a year. The tourism study you all had done that long ago was a little under 300 million. One project, 100 million on average, more over 20 years. So this one project could add a third to the tourism impact of the city of Lawrence. Just again, one project, which is pretty unprecedented. This is something of the size and the impact that we've never seen here before, as far as I can tell. And on a comparable basis, this is the biggest things that have happened in Phoenix and Washington, D.C. on a relative basis. This is a big project. $418 million in net new earnings, 430 full-time jobs, incremental sales tax to the city while the bonds are being paid off, while the increments going into the project, even during that period, 27.8 over 20 years, 32.5 over 20 years to the county, and then increased property tax of 8.5 billion, a million, 5.7 goes to the school districts because you can't dedicate that. These are conservative, and our consultant thinks it might be a little bit bigger for the city. I said, well, let's let their consultants look at it. Let's have that discussion whether that's true or not. And they think it could be as much as $4 million higher than you see here, but that is something we'll evaluate as we go forward. Community benefits, again, are parking, housing, and events that are going to occur. And these events, if there's a hotelier that's worried about this project, these events are going to be 500 to 1,000 people on average going to these conferences. This is a 166-room hotel. They're going to have to stay somewhere else. And so there's going to be a flow over of people. And if you've ever been to a conference before, you don't stay at the conference the whole time. I don't know anybody that does. You go and then you kind of sneak off during the day. You go downtown, you look around, you spend some time. So they're going to be staying in other hotels as well. And they're going to be spending time in the downtown area, bringing revenue to the whole area. So this is intended, and the uses that we're looking at here are intended to complement, not compete with downtown. Total project is now $759 million, phase one and phase two. Endowment, $346 million, which is 6 times larger than they've ever done a project for, was the Cap Fed building was $60 million, so it's almost 6 times bigger. Debt for athletics, our state funding $85 million, developers putting in $126 million of their debt and equity, and then these tools are $86.7 million. Of this $60 million, which is STAR bonds, which is the first one, $50 million of that's due to the state sales tax. So what the state is really doing with the STAR bond tool that is available, they're putting $85 million directly into the project to build a conference center, And this tool allows us to access $50 million of state sales taxes to do the project. So this is a very significant contribution. This is highly unusual that you'll get a state opportunity to do this, but you got to have a project that makes this work. And so you can see how much is the property taxes in the community improvement districts. So looking at another way, 448 million phase one, 311 for phase two, and then 126.2 million is the developer contribution. These total tools are 11.4% of the project. And the challenge is to do this total project, this is the cost, that piece makes this over the finish line. We don't know how to we're maxed out on endowment, we're maxed out on athletic debt to borrow, we're maxed out on our resources. This tool can have this project happen as it's being envisioned. And that's why we're asking for your partnership on this. So summary of the benefits, again, 86.7 million economic development tools. And these are tools that it's revenue you wouldn't get if the project doesn't happen. So none of these benefits happen if the project doesn't happen. So you're taking a portion of the revenue that project generates to put into the project to make it happen so you can get the rest. And then when it's done, you get it all. Again, the conference center can reach its full potential. Parking and housing will be addressed. We have to find 1,000 beds somehow. This is a tool we're very fortunate developer came with that gives us a big piece of that. And it's the product and the supply that students are demanding the most, apartment style housing. We probably need to do a residence hall as well to get the right price point, but this is a product that we really do need somewhere on the campus. Again, it makes it more prosperous KU and the university and city. And there's a test, and I've done these in my previous life in both my prior jobs. It's called a but-for test. You should never, ever, and I would say this to any city or any state, never give these tools away if the project's going to happen anyway. Because you're just giving the money away that you get and use for your city. The but-for test is a process you go through, an economic analysis you do that says, does this really need these tools to work? The but-for test is something you will do and something you'll analyze, but I can say pretty definitively, I have no idea how to do this project if we can't fill that gap, which is that yellow slice of the pie you said earlier. So there is a but-for test you'll do. This project needs those public improvements that we need help doing in order to get the private development to come in, to get the hotel, the conference center needs, and the apartments style student housing that we need. This is the maps that we are proposing, and there is one small change on these maps. These are, and what you've had submitted to you, there's a parking lot just north of here, which is where the construction is going on that endowment owns, is added on the actual map that we submitted. This is a graphic that got brought in right before that change. So we'd be putting a little yellow dot right there where that hand is on all these maps. So the maps are current. This thing is slightly off, just one parcel. But the purpose of this is the entire university is the Starbond district. The entire university, short of the crossing, is the community improvement district. And the area where the project is, where the property taxes will be assessed, is a TIF district. And the reason for this is if you were to drive up to 15th and Castle or Bob Billington Castle, you'll see all this vacant land. That's endowment land, that is developable, that has lots of opportunities. And as we're facing this economic cliff and all the things we need to do to be successful, we need to leverage every asset we have. We need to leverage our buildings we're not using and have conferences and events in there as well. That when we're not using them along with the stadium, we need to look at our real estate opportunities and work with the city of Lawrence to leverage those for land, to make the land profitable for both of us. And so this gives us an incentive. Anything that happens anywhere in this site in the next 20 years pays off that debt even earlier. This is why I think it will be paid off sooner. This is why I think if I'm a bondholder, it's a good investment. I think we have conservative assumptions in all our analysis. And I think that we're giving the leverage of anything that happens will pay this off early, which will make these sell probably better than most of them do because of those strategies that we have. The reason why the crossing isn't here, there's already a community improvement district at the crossing, and that was helped to fund some sewer projects and other projects along 23rd Avenue that were needed by the city and for the project. And again, the tax increment financing is only the area that's taxable. So the next steps we're asking for is, at some point, approval of the maps, approval of the tools, and then, today I think what we're talking about is we will pay for the consultant that you will hire to review everything I showed you, to look at the numbers, to make sure you're comfortable with them, because again, that's what you're supposed to do as your due diligence. The Department of Commerce will do the same thing. We'll go to the Department of Commerce, we'll pay for their consultant They'll look at it. So this is going to be highly unusual. The developer doesn't usually, do this kind of work, but because it's our reputation on the line, we had Hunden look at it. You're going to look at it. State's going to look at it. And then we got the whole district. So this is going to have a lot of reviews, a lot of eyes on it. And then we'll get to the point where we'll try to get those aligned, come to an agreement, negotiate all the things like the map and all the elements of this project. And then, assuming that's all successful as we go through this process together, is really begin construction at the earliest, a year from now. At the earliest, if the tools are in place and everything's done, we can start construction on the project, which will probably take 2 years to do. So just in closing, this is the plaza. This is, a really cool view of what, we don't have anything like this on campus. I don't know there's anything like this in Lawrence that looks like this. The War Memorial is kind of in between the two areas. This is a place where you can have weddings, community events. It ties into the stadium. It's where you can go when you're not in a conference. It's near the hotel. It's near student housing. And this is again, I've been fortunate. I was involved in the downtown ASU project and Cityscape, which is a big economic development downtown project in Phoenix, which is vacant, deserted areas, 20 years ago, and been involved in the Wharf project in Washington, D.C. Those are big transformational projects. This is as big or bigger on a relative basis. This is a once in a generation. As I told Travis Goff, the athletic director, it's really a once in 5 generations because it's a 100-year-old building we're renovating here. So once a generation project to transform the university and the city and help us make this a big economic development project that we have in the city of Lawrence. And I've been here 4 years. I've been to many different universities, got 3 kids in college, so I did all the tours that, everybody does when you're trying to find the right place for your kid to go to school. And I think this is one of the coolest college towns in the country, bar none. I just walked down Mass Street right before this, and the Christmas lights and all that. I mean, if I could film that, we could get people to come to conference here even in the wintertime. And so this is a cool town, but this makes it even cooler. This gives us a gateway. This gives an asset to the city of Lawrence, Douglas County, and the university. And so we're looking for a partnership. One of the business leaders says, "What do you want from us?" That was a question in the meeting we had. And I'm like, I want a partnership. You don't do these projects successfully if it's just a university. You don't do these projects successfully if it's just the city. You do these, or just the state. You do these when you're together on these. And the reason why you see this massive economic development in downtown Phoenix that wasn't there 25 years ago, there was a partnership. There were weekly meetings that we met for a year. We did all the things together. What do you need? What do we need? How do we make this work? Those partnerships make these projects, these are really hard projects. They're really hard projects to do. But when you're in partnership, you can make them work, and you can make them work for everybody. So my comment to the business leaders, I need your partnership. How do we make you successful to make us successful? Because if I have a conference and they have a great experience here, but they go downtown and they don't have a good experience in downtown Lawrence, they're not coming back 5 years from now. I want the repeat conferences over and over again where they always want to come back. And that requires us to work together. So I thank you for your time for this. And again, I'm looking for answer any questions you have, any concerns you have. And again, we're looking for obviously the tools, but we're looking for a partnership long term. And
You mentioned another parking lot north of the stadium. Can you talk more about that? Or were you
Yeah.
talking, what were you talking about there?
so one of the developer proposals is to put a surface parking lot up where the Sunflower site is now. So there's about 40 student housing things up there, mainly grad students, older buildings. So you'd have surface parking up there and then the underground parking underneath. Those are the 2 parts of the project that they're thinking about doing. Again, this is a developer proposal. And so, things that work or don't work in terms of traffic and the parking spaces, we haven't negotiated with them yet. We've taken their proposal, we've taken the analysis, and that is part of their proposal is a surface lot up there. Could be used for game day, obviously, and could be used to meet all the parking needs we have up there. Because those buildings are old and they are probably at the end of their life as well. They're fairly old duplex style housing that we want to replace. I'll just put it that way.
Okay. And,
Mostly grad students live there now on a rental basis.
okay. And then you talked about some of this at the DLI meeting. The conference, the folks running the conference center, I know they run lots of conference centers, and I've been to lots of conferences where there's different modes of transportation to get to the airport, to get to other amenities, to get to other things that are showing off on the conference, obviously here downtown. Have you had any discussions about what that might look like in this particular project?
I think that's, again, where we need the partnership. What's the, I think you were at the meeting with the downtown business owners were there. What's the best way to connect that area? And we need to work with you on what's the best way to come down Mississippi and 9th Street. What's the best mode to get there? We're open to any and all discussions, but that, again, that has to be a partnership discussion. So I'm open. I don't want to be quoted, but I will be. The trolley thing came up. I don't know if that's somebody threw that out in a meeting. I don't know if that's a good idea or a bad idea. But everything should be on the table that you're comfortable with, because it's connecting to the city. But we certainly would work with you on how do we best. It works best to be successful. If people think they just got to stay there on that site, they'll come once. They want to come downtown. They want to see this really cool Mass Street. They want to be able to go through the city. So what's the best way to do the traffic flow, to get people transported? We're open to any and all suggestions. Again, we'll discuss that with the developer, and we'll discuss that with you.
And to be clear, the 749 number, obviously that's a rough number, but it, at this point, doesn't have anything in it for any road improvements that we all might find necessary, either Mississippi or Maine or 11th or 14th or anything. That can be part of the discussion.
Absolutely. And I think I mentioned before, the consultant said, hey, I think there's maybe 4 million more star bonds in this if we change this piece of data here. And I'm like, I'm not going to keep a moving target going here. Let's let the city's consultants look at it, see if they agree. So there could be some additional possibilities in this data, or you could move the TIF a little farther up or something like that. There's all kinds of options here. But if it doesn't connect, it doesn't work. So yes, the developer proposal is really the site, but we got to figure out the transportation part too. And we'd be glad to work with you in the coming months to figure that out. What does that cost? What does it need? How do we make it work?
Okay, thank you.
I had a couple questions. So the tax that is collected, does that include the transient guest tax? Would we be able to keep that?
Whatever is in your 1%, I would ask Craig that question, would be what would be in the star bond piece. So the 0.55 would not. I'm not sure where that sits. Sorry,
I don't know either. I don't know either. I don't think it does, but I do think I read that some TGT money can be included in at least one of the tools that they're requesting. So we need to.
Yeah, we would need to clarify that. That would.
But that is all part of negotiation, so to speak. But you need enough to make the project work, but you want to keep, like your affordable housing and your
when changing, we want to keep
like
that TGT money. I would want to, for sure.
It's the 1%. I don't know for sure. Certainly,
that's not
1% piece
that's
versus your
different.
0.55.
Yeah, that's different. Okay. And on the parking, is that public parking, just general public parking, or is it?
The parking garage will be owned by the university, so it would be for people staying in the hotel, people coming to the conference center, the students living in the housing, and then just general public. So one of the things that we're going to, and we never had done this before because we've never really had to. This is going to be a slightly smaller stadium, less. It was 47. It's going to be a little bit smaller, but it's going to have these events all the time. It's going to have trade shows and occasionally a concert that maybe be half the capacity of the stadium. Is we need to we have lots of parking. It's not optimized. So one of the things that we're asking OVG Group to do, who does this in big places, is that work with us, and we'll be working with parking. How do we optimize our parking so we don't have unused parking that maybe is closer to the stadium and make this work and disrupt the neighborhoods less? So parking optimization, there's 1,000+ spaces being built to replace 361, but we need to optimize our parking too. So we have a parking study. We talked to the neighborhood group about this yesterday that will be done in early 25, so hopefully sometime in January, and a traffic study to say what's the best way to optimize this. So we need to do both. We need 1,000 beds, and we need to optimize parking. The project doesn't solve all of our challenges, but it's a big piece toward helping us solve them.
Okay, thanks. Just one more question. So what I see on this yellow map is that the entire campus, you are wanting to designate as the Star Bond District. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Does that mean all sales tax that's generated within that district is recaptured by the university?
The base stays, the taxes that are currently there stay with the city, this county, and the state. So if we were to build some retail kind of space up on 15th and Castle, obviously in partnership with you all, that tax would go to pay off the debt, that increment of tax, because it's new. Anything that happens new would then go to pay off those bonds earlier. And the quicker they're paid off, the quicker you get the full tax benefit of the project. It gives you more security for people who buy the bonds, and it helps pay it off quicker so this community gets the full impact as quick as possible.
So the sales tax that's currently being generated at the
Anywhere you
university,
keep, right. Right.
the state keeps that. That goes.
Yeah, and the state keeps, you keep, the county keeps.
Okay, and that same, the crossing would be the same way?
The crossing, yes. Anything that's currently there, anything that new would be the increment that would go to the project. So one of the questions that comes up is the Dillons is moving. And so, we asked the question and we got a legal opinion on this. The state has this clearly they've had this happen before, is if you're moving something and relocating it into a district, you can't take that whole amount. So the base of the Dillons where it is stays with the city and the state and the county. It's only the net new increment that goes to the Star Bonds. So it's so you don't relocate things into a district and get all that money taken away from because it relocated. So we would request the state take that base of the existing Dillons and put it in the base for the city's county and state. That's a highly unusual situation where a store is moving onto a district. We don't want the increment's all you would get.
But the other new stores that are going to be built at the crossing, that would be captured?
Anything that's new that isn't there now, yes, that's correct.
Got it.
But to be clear, though, 90%, so 10% we would keep, I think, Star Bonds, 10%, 90% goes to the Star Bonds, 10% stays. Is that correct?
10% of the state tax stays, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. It's statute only allows you to take 90%.
Yeah.
Again, it's a but for, if the project doesn't happen, there's no taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So you're keeping a portion of the taxes you get because of the project.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, your investment is a portion of the revenue the project generates. That's the investment that goes in to make the project happen. It's kind of hard to get your head around sometimes, but for that project, there's nothing, right? Nothing new. That portion of that new, you put it in the project to make it happen so you can get it all later and you get a portion of it while it's being built.
Mayor?
Please.
Oh, I had a quick question. I know you mentioned that you talked to the neighborhood yesterday, and I was just curious about, as the construction, the project goes along, what the intent is to go ahead and keep the neighborhood and the committee of the neighborhood in the loop.
We will continue to meet with them. They brought up their concerns about the parking and the traffic flow and where the trucks were going. So we'll continue to meet with the neighborhood group. Again, these projects are partnerships. You get the neighbors irritated, you get the city irritated, you get the state irritated. You got to work. So we'll continue dialogue with anybody and everybody throughout this project. And neighborhoods, we're committed to meeting with them. They gave us a lot of good feedback yesterday. It was a good meeting, and we got a lot of great feedback from the business community. And these projects evolve and change, and you got to be open-minded and keep doing it to keep it driving forward. That's why they're hard. Start with a developer proposal.
Any questions for Jeff? Commissioner Sellers? Anything else?
I thought Tony had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry that. Sorry.
Gilmore and Bell, our bond counsel, is here, and he is prepared to respond to Commissioner Larson's question about transient guest tax, if you'd like to hear that tonight.
Please, thank you.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Kevin Wimpy with Gilmore and Bell. We represent the city as your bond counsel, so nice to see you all again. Good question, Commissioner, about transient guest tax. As Mr. DeWitt mentioned, this is really a three-party negotiation with the State Department of Commerce for the purposes of Star Bonds. I think it's a safe assumption to assume that transient guest tax would be captured, with the state pitching in its full 90% of its 6.5% sales tax. In exchange for that, it's usually assumed that the full allowable capture of local sales taxes would be captured, including the transient guest tax.
Okay, thank you.
I think I understood that, but let me make sure.
I'll let him back up here because
Yeah.
collecting
Well, I think I want to make sure that, so you're saying that the transient sales tax would be captured by this, 90% of the transient sales tax would be captured by this and put into the state fund for the TIF?
all of it.
All of it.
All of it's
100%?
net new
Okay,
TGT
all of it,
for that project,
for that project?
in that
Okay.
space. The net new.
Okay,
It's 6% or something like that.
okay. Any other questions for Jeff right now?
Mr. DeWitt, I want to make sure I understood in the presentation correctly, because I think I heard you say with the housing that would be generated with this is off-campus housing. Will the housing here be considered on-campus or off-campus?
It will be
This
considered
is-
university housing, so we'll
Okay.
partner with the developer, probably, it could be in a master lease, that's all to be negotiated, but we'd be putting our students into that housing.
Okay, and then the second part of my question is, as you've laid out that the Star Bond project encapsulates all of the land, well, most of that contiguous piece of land that was mentioned in the presentation, is it the goal of the university as it addresses its housing shortage to utilize this Star Bond project to address that?
No, the Star Bonds are very defined in what they can be for, so they would need to go to a multi-purpose stadium. So the state would tell you, if you were talking to Department of Commerce, we want our portion of that to go into your stadium or go into the improvements related to it. So we couldn't use it to do a new law school or do a housing project somewhere else. That would not be
Correct.
allowed. So we are, again, going to the Board of Regents tomorrow for a second read on a $100 million financing authority that the state has to approve, to have that be part of our solution for housing somewhere else on campus, not related to Star Bonds.
Okay.
And then what's the utilization rate on that 361 parking lot right now? Does the university have any idea kind of what the
I don't
utilization
know
rate
off the
is?
top of my head. I know we were talking about this with the neighborhood group yesterday. Not, we had actually drone studies where we flew over the parking lots to see what the utilization is. So he has that number. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I'll get you that
That'd be great.
that percentage of what that current parking lot utilization is. We have that pretty detailed because we've been studying it for quite a while.
Right. And I
And
know
the
that-
parking developer just got this data for this project last week, and they're factoring that into their study as well.
Okay. Because I want to see what the net gain's really going to be based
Yeah.
on what we're seeing here. And then what about the utilization of that garage for these conferences? Is that enough parking to go along with the?
We believe so. So, here's students, 443 students will use about 300 spaces. That's about 70% of people who live in our apartments bring a car. When you're looking at 166 beds, there's 2 bedrooms, so some people have 1 car for 2 people. So the developers factored into how many cars they think they'll need for the hotel, and then being able to park the retail, because if people go to shop and they can't park, they're not going to come to your retail site. And then to handle the spaces. So they believe in our discussions with them, this is the right size to make this development work. But again, we're going to need to optimize all our parking, because if you bring in a football game, or you have a soccer game, or you have a trade show or a concert, and there'll be very few concerts, maybe 2 a year or something like that, you got to have parking for everybody. The Mississippi Street Garage up on the hill. But they believe that is what the development needs to make it work, the retail work. People want to stay in the hotel, people want to shop, students are there, and the conference is there.
Okay.
That's their analysis.
Okay.
And we're going to obviously beat into that as we begin negotiations with them.
Any other questions for Jeff before we open up to public comment?
In the plaza, you mentioned that being a partnership with the city and the university, but as far as billing for events and whatnot, I'm assuming what percentage of that would be university and what percentage of that would potentially be?
I think that is part of the, so I want our general manager from Oakview Group that's going to be running the stadium to be on the Explore Lawrence's board, so that we're working together. So I think that's an open question. If you have a big event you want to do, and events get planned 2 to 3 years out. They don't, you don't plan one next week and they happen. They're planned 2 or 3 weeks out. So I want us to have a partnership. When you have space we might need to make our conference work, or you have space you need, or you want to book the event, I think we work with Explore Lawrence and we do that in partnership. So I don't think that's defined as what that needs to be. It's what are the needs of us to be successful? Because again, I want a 30, 40-year-old family that has young kids to come to a conference, I don't care who has it, and see how beautiful Lawrence is and how beautiful the campus is, and go, when their kids turn 17, hey, let's go to Lawrence. Maybe we want to go there. I remember that conference I went to. That's how you beat the demographic cliff. So I think it's an open question. We're not defined anywhere. It's book the events, keep it booked, keep it active, keep it going, keep the development and the economic impact that it generates. I don't care who has it there.
Okay. On slide 53, that's your benefits slide. We talked about this a bit with the 430 full-time equivalent jobs over 20 years. I'm assuming some of this will take into account construction jobs. So what would be, are you saying the net would be 430, or what would the total net would be?
Most of those are not construction. They're hotel, conference center, retail kind of jobs. So probably 40% of it is retail, tourism type of jobs. Probably 40% is, related to stadium activity. And then the rest of it is whatever other,
So these are net jobs based on what will be created there?
Correct. That's correct. There's some construction, but that's not a big part over 20 years.
Okay.
'Cause
So
that's a
with
short period of time.
these numbers, were you able to identify what wages would be on those?
So you look
As
at,
far?
I don't have the slide up in front of me, but it's like $430 million and it's close to a little under 100,000 a year average, because you can divide one by the other and see it comes pretty close to that number. So these are $80,000, $100,000 jobs. These are, service jobs, people who work in hotels and things like that. So it's a little less than 100,000 a year on average type of jobs that we're talking about.
So you're talking about wait staff and maid staff will be making 80 grand.
I didn't say that. I said on average.
On the math, that's what you're.
Yeah, but I mean,
math is.
that's on average, so there'll be some make more than that.
Okay.
I don't know what they make. I have no clue what the salaries are, but the average of the whole thing is about 100,000 a year over the 20-year period. It's roughly, the jobs are pretty equal to the $1 million number. And we can get you the breakdown of the type of jobs if you want. We'll give you the number of jobs in each category. Like, if I haven't got that to you already, we will. And you can kind of see what that salaries assumptions are in that number.
Yeah.
And again, some make more, some make less.
That's to be expected.
Okay, anything else for Jeff?
Mayor, I just had a quick one. I was kind of curious. Have you, since you're including a conference center here, you've determined a need. I'm just kind of curious if folks have reached out to you in the past saying, if you guys had a conference center, I might think of like having a project here, or I might have thought of, relocating here to go ahead and.
We have that going on right now. So we have a nonprofit we established 3 years ago when I first got here, called Jayhawk Hospitality, that brings in conferences and events on the existing assets we have. We have the Union, Bird Union, we have classroom spaces. They have, I believe, $1 million of business booked for next July already without this facility. So every time they're out market, they go to all the trade shows. They often go with Explore Lawrence. So I have a whole office that does this. It's a 501c3 that does this kind of work. And we're already telling them about this thing coming. So yeah, we're pre-selling that. And then Kirk Goodman, who's our new general manager, he's out there already working, because you book out 2 to 3 years in advance. So yes, we're already marketing this new facility and what it's going to look like. And and people are said, yeah, I'd like to come there when you get it done. So that's already occurring.
And you're building the conference center regardless.
Absolutely. So you'll have phase 1 will be there whether the phase 2 happens or not. You just want to maximize the output of phase 1. Conference center, if we don't do phase 2, you'll get more local and regional events. We'll still book events. We'll probably get roughly the same number, but they're not going to stay they may not stay at all. They may come in, more regional, come in, and then go home. We want people to come here, stay for several days, spend their money, and then leave. As I've told the 7 mayors I worked for during my career, Other people money is the best kind of money. It comes, it doesn't have a big impact, it brings dollars in, and it helps you, maintain your budgets and not have to do cuts and things like that. So we want people that are going to come here and spend money. And Phase 2 brings that type of events. The Oakview Group, because we can get you, there's a niche of people who don't want to go to Vegas, they don't want to go to Boston or Chicago or Washington, D.C. They want a kind of quiet, laid back, university type of setting. There's a whole group of those kind of conferences, and this is a perfect place for it. And we can bring those in from all over the country if we have the right assets around the stadium. That's the conversation I've had with the director, the head of OVG.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Pat Peary. Before I begin my 3 minutes, can I please have a moment of courtesy to explain a clarification to a letter that was submitted right before noon to make the written comment. Otherwise, I'll run through it as fast as I can. If that's, Mayor, if that would be all right.
I don't understand the question, sir. Can you
Would I
repeat it?
please be allowed a courtesy of a few extra seconds to clarify a letter that was submitted before noon, and then I'll get right into my comment.
If you could get within our 30 through 3 minutes, I appreciate that very much. If you could stay within.
I'll try to hustle through
I don't
it.
like to break the rules for anybody, unfortunately, and we need to just stay to the course. So.
Okay, my name is Pat Peary, and I submitted a letter that was included in your package. It's under the letterhead of the 5 neighborhood associations that surround the North District of the KU campus. Mm-hmm. That letter was submitted on behalf of the neighborhood individual members of the Community Program Advisory Committee that was appointed by the city and KU to serve on the Gateway District Community Advisory Committee. And it was not submitted on behalf of the neighborhood associations themselves. I wanted to make sure that was clear. The neighborhood associations have not made a formal request for anything regarding this. This is from the members who have been actively serving and participating in the Community Advisory Committee process. With that, I'll just say that I'm here tonight as one of those representatives, and I was appointed along with several others to be from the neighborhoods to be on that committee that was formed pursuant to the KU City Cooperation Agreement. The agreement spells out how the city and KU are to cooperate in the use of land as it may affect the neighborhoods, and it states that it specifies the land use regulations the university shall comply with in its use and ownership of university real property within the city. The letter identifies the 3 areas where we think that this does not comply with the university has failed to comply with the cooperation agreement. Most significantly of those 3, one relates to the building heights, the other relates to the transportation impact study and the recommended improvements that need to be done to the public infrastructure now and potentially in the future. But most importantly, I think there's a provision in the cooperation agreement that sets forth the actual advisory committee process and what it is, the concerns it is supposed to address collaboratively with the city representatives, university representatives, neighborhood representatives, and adjoining property owners. That's in Section 4B of the cooperation agreement. Many hours have been spent by the members of that committee attempting to work with the university and collaborating on these things. That process for Phase 1 has not been completed yet because it's pending the campus-wide parking study that won't be done until the spring. And so what we're urging the commission to do is to delay the consideration of the...
Sir, we appreciate, Pat, we appreciate your feedback. We read your letter. we all appreciate everything that you said, and I read it thoroughly, and I understand what your needs are and
Okay.
what you're asking for today, so.
Thank you, I
very
appreciate
much.
it.
Uh-huh.
Mayor and Commissioners, my name's Mary Kay Mahoney. I'm an owner-occupant in the 900 block of Mississippi Street. I'd like to support the letter by neighborhood members requesting a delay in consideration of the Phase 2 request for intensive and star bonds until, one, the KU plans are more fleshed out in terms of their impact on the neighborhoods, and two, the required process between KU and the advisory committee has been completed for Phase 1. From my personal perspective as an owner-occupant on Mississippi Street, it would help before the city considers an application from KU to have a great deal more clarity on the idea of a connective route between KU and downtown, especially since, as has come up, there are references to things like trolleys being thrown around. This is something that has the possibility of greatly impacting the lives of those of us who live along those streets. Of course, there's also the issue of parking. A recent draft statement from the Chancellor's office lists as a community benefit, quote, additional parking to address concerns related to parking in nearby neighborhoods. But while KU's developers are proposing a 1,000-space parking garage to replace the 90-some spaces being eliminated, it appears quite possible that most, if not all, of those additional spaces will be needed for the 443 student apartment beds, the 162 hotel rooms, the 16 condos, and the convention center, to say nothing of the various retail establishments being considered. The adjacent neighborhoods have quite often been treated as an additional parking lot for KU. There's a dangerous potential for Gateway 2, as planned, to make the situation worse for those of us who live there. Overall, I think an application for funding is premature at this time. Taking the time to follow the established procedures for the interaction between KU and the advisory committee could help provide the clarity that is very much needed. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris Flowers, and I just want to start off saying, when I don't feel like going to Vegas, Lawrence, Kansas is my second choice for a vacation. My first question is, how much is this going to raise property values, especially in the immediate area? How many residents will be priced out of their current places? Are neighborhoods going to be gentrified? If so, why should we be giving away tax dollars just to increase the cost of living for people already living here? If KU wants tax breaks, how about they build affordable housing? There used to be some, I think the old Stover apartments, and then they build them down and build a new place. So I think KU kind of owes the Lawrence some affordable housing. Also, how did Rock Chalk Park turn out? So I hope y'all go back and look at that. And I want to say, KU says it will have lots of events. Do we have any guarantees on that? What if a nearby city builds a new convention center? Wasn't that the Rock Chalk Park? Part of that problem is, well, other cities built something similar, and so not as many people were coming here. Are these parking lots free for the public to park in, or will KU be charging money to park there? I think that should matter when considering tax breaks. And part of the parking problems, as the previous commenter mentioned, KU has parking, but they charge people to park there. That's why these neighborhoods have students parking there, is because the students don't want to pay to park at KU. But if KU would let them park there for free, there wouldn't be parking problems in neighborhoods. So I think that should definitely be considered, is if KU is going to be charging for this parking that they're saying is a community benefit. And then also, when we talking about tax breaks and this KU stuff, I want to talk about 21st and Iowa. They came here saying they were going to have a new grocery store at 21st and Iowa. And then it turns out, it's not actually a new store. It's just moving Dillon's from 23rd over to 21st. And I kind of remember they didn't say they were going to move Dillon's. I think they mentioned maybe a price chopper. I mean, they've made mentions of what's going to happen before, and some of those mentions don't turn out. So I just hope you all do some serious consideration. And I'm not against this project. I'm just against y'all giving them tax money to do this, because it's going to make losers for some people that are already living here. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Hi, my name's Kyle Thompson. I'm the chairperson of the Oriade Residents Association and the treasurer of the Lawrence Association of Neighborhoods. I wanted to complete Pat's statement and add a couple of things of my own. The commission and city would be better served by directing staff to first ensure, number one, that the cooperation agreement is complied with. Number two, the public infrastructure needs are clearly identified. The parking provided is adequate. Four, that traffic mitigation needs in the surrounding neighborhoods are included, and that there are regulations in place to control use of the stadium for outdoor concerts and other events other than football games, commencement, and other university events. Obviously, I live 3 blocks away from here, and our neighborhood surrounds the thing completely, and our needs, like the previous speakers have said, are parking and transportation. And then also, we are worried about the concerts and large events like that would produce a lot of noise, and they couldn't park on the lawns like they do during football games. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners, Mayor. I have a few comments here, but one thing I'm deeply concerned about is the agreement you're about to sign, which I believe suggests under the agreement, Part B, that you will provide necessary staff, legal, and financial planning assistance. It may not be widely known that there is no economic development staff at this time. That I, as a taxpayer, assume that the staff will be looking out for the taxpayer and not for the applicant, and without adequate staff to address that, even though I appreciate KU paying for the study, it is not their job to protect the taxpayer from a bad investment. Listening today and yesterday, I was interested in this partnership talk, but it doesn't really talk about reciprocity. The neighborhoods have been very clear about parking, stormwater infrastructure, and I think more importantly, adherence to the original MOU between KU and the city. There are actual rules that have been established, and we should expect them to be adhered to. And tonight is that night that you should send those messages, not a month and a half from now when you can't do anything about it. I would also suggest, as some have, that it's hard to trust KU when they've moved things on and off tax rolls to their benefit, and you should, as our representatives, make sure that we are protected as taxpayers from that kind of behavior. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment in the room? Okay. Any online?
Julie Jones. Hi, Julie Jones, 66047. I had the opportunity to watch Manhattan go from a losing football team very badly I was there in the 70s and then again when Bill Schneider took over. But they waited until they actually had a winning football team and were generating the income for the city and for the school before they took on a big project like this. So it's nice that they're looking at other avenues of what they can do with this area, given that the football team is not a national title group. And I don't know, this year didn't look that great as well. I am also concerned about doling out $60 million as a loan and getting paid back 1%. I would rather have it at a standard rate, commercial loan rate for interest, coming back to the city and coming back to us, the taxpayers. And then the other thing, like one of the other presenters, or not presenters, whatever, people spoke about, is the infrastructure for this system and what will it do to the watershed, the sewer, all of that, and who's going to be responsible for that outside of the KU property. I think that's going to be us. And so I think more research needs to be done before we look at accepting this right off the bat. It's great they came in with their numbers and their presentation. I just think there needs to be more research and numbers done from our end before we approve this and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Jeffrey Hepler.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Commission, Mayor. Took a lot of notes. Hope you can bear with me while I try to decipher everything. First of all, I do appreciate the presentation. Very good detail. Obviously, a lot of thought and effort and money put into it. There were a few concerns that I had that were addressed by the commissioners. The parking, for example, by Commissioner Larson, and the affordable housing by Commissioner Sellers, and what we're going to do with the Sunflower Apartments, etc. I agree with Julie in that stormwater management is it's a concern that I haven't heard this evening. I don't know if it's been addressed or not in the planning. I'm sure it has in some degree. I saw some canal in the rendering in that plaza, but I would like to know more about stormwater management for all those impermeable surfaces. And granted, it was a parking lot before and didn't have permeable surfaces, but what are we doing about it with that development and having an underground parking garage to boot? I would also like to see more about the partnership with downtown and how we're going to provide transit, whether it's through a shuttle or a trolley. Trolley be good. And yeah, that's all I got. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay. Any other questions pop up from commissioners after the public comments, or anything since our last question of KU or any of their representatives? I do want to maybe bring up a little bit of relative to the bond council stuff, financial side. I know I didn't give much time to that, but I also know this is a preliminary stage, but I want to make sure to ask the city manager if there's any specific information that they might want to bring up at this point in time relative to some of the questions about taxes or what we're going to lose in exchange for gaining in the future, I guess. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, because if they've already talked about the ramifications of this on us. Was curious, is there any other information that they have for us on that?
Are you asking?
Well, specifically, we're going to lose transient sales tax. I want to make sure that that's clear on this.
Well, I think it's important to say this is their request.
Right.
Nothing has been granted.
Right, of course.
This is a starting point in the discussion, and this authorizes us to recapture resources to go through the negotiation and the analysis process. So it's important we understand that. You're not approving anything about what might happen in the future. You're approving the beginning of that conversation, and we're considering the beginning in their request.
Right, of course.
Okay.
But I want to make sure there's no other questions related to sales tax or potential taxes that we didn't talk about previously, because that's the first time I had heard that was tonight. I want to make sure there wasn't any other potential losses of revenue as well.
Sure. What's qualified within CID and within tax increment financing, community improvement district, tax increment financing, and the STAR bonds. We could have either of our consultants go through what those qualifying revenue sources are. Would that be helpful?
Well, I think they did that for us
Okay.
previously, and then, of course, in the presentation, but I just want to make sure there's no other questions out there related to how this is going to be configured and what taxes we may be foregoing in the future if we move down this path of agreeing to accept an application.
Yeah, accepting the application does not make us do anything.
Right.
It means that we start the conversation, and whatever revenue sources are allowed under the statutes that allow for these devices and tools is allowed, not required. So we would be in discussions about what percentage of property and sales tax we might want to contribute as a public-private partnership in that process. We could, again, go through what are the qualifying taxes. TGT, I know that came up, and I'm glad we had Kevin here to give us that answer. But otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. These are sales taxes and property taxes.
Yeah.
Anything to add? Okay.
Want to make sure we don't have
right.
any other things pop up.
I do have a question. Speaking of, part of our action tonight is to potentially approve city recapturing expenses. What expenses exactly would they be responsible for?
Any legal analysis, mostly financial analysis. So our consultants, longstanding consultants in relationship with Baker Tilly, as well as Gilmore and Bell primarily. If we need to hire other consultants to help and specialize, these are specialized facilities. This is a stadium project. This is housing, student housing project. This is conference facilities. This is retail. If there's any specialized analysis that we want to do, there's consultants that can help us with that analysis, and we would engage them and bring them onto the team. And then once they did their analysis and we were satisfied with their work, we'd be reimbursed for any of the work that they did on that by the project.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions. First, as far as the but-for analysis, has there been discussion as far as a tentative timeline of depending on the vote tonight, when that would come back before us?
That is, I wouldn't have the schedule. The KU would have to submit those. You could hear tonight even that we're talking about there's some pieces of it that are still in negotiation. We would need to understand what their assumptions are. So the timing, we can't give a date certain for that.
Right.
I know KU is on a certain time frame and track that they would like to see this done. With their construction schedule, definitely has some hard deadlines with the seasons of football going in and when they'd like to have those things done. But before we would say yes to any of these analysis, we'd have to take the time it takes to understand their specific studies and reports and ask the questions that we want to ask, and then get answers before all these analyses are done, including the but-for. So if there's anybody on the KU team or Baker Tilly or Gilmore and Bell would add to that, I'd welcome it. Okay.
Just coming up.
Just to answer that, we will provide Baker Tilly, if that's your consultant, and your Gilmore Bell, your bond counsel, all the analysis we've done. They'll get full access to OVG, who's doing the conference planning and the events they think they can book or will book. We'll give them access to the developers. Any data that you possibly need, we will provide that we already have it already gathered up and ready to go. So we can get this to them as early as next week because we've done our own study. And we'll show them that data. They'll look at it and go, I don't agree with that assumption. I don't know that you can do that. That will be a dialogue of dueling consultants, if you will. Your consultants will look at it. They'll come to their conclusions. You got to get comfortable with it. I'm comfortable with what we're submitting to you, or I wouldn't be before you, but you're going to need to get comfortable, make sure you believe the but-for, make sure you agree with the assumptions. So we're going to give you every piece of data we have for your folks to look at, get comfortable with, so you can see whether you're comfortable going forward with the project or not. Everything we've gathered, we will provide to you very expeditiously for you to look at on your schedule, because you need your time and your resources, whatever that takes, we'll work with you on it. And but-for is part of that, and you got to have data to do that. We'll give you that data.
But I would ask, as we go into the negotiation, we would assume that there may be some ability to see modifications from the plan that you have,
Yep.
which might affect whether we'd have to rerun the but-for.
Right.
So we have to wait till the music stops on knowing exactly what the project is, and then to understand what that but-for.
And keep in mind, we'll have to talk to the developer, because, there'll be a developer, okay, if you do that, I can do this, I can't do that. So there'll be a developer discussion, city discussion. Commerce has got a say in this too. So we're going to be having the same dialogue we're having to do with the Department of Commerce, giving them all the data. They may have pushback. So this is a process. And you will see what the state does. You'll see what we did. You'll do your analysis. And again, it may go round, because one thing changes, you got to do it again. We'll fund whatever that takes to look at that.
Question is, that does raise a question. Is there a requirement that either on star bonds, that Commerce says, do we have to vote before Commerce, or Commerce have to vote before us, or it can go either way?
I would refer to the person who knows star bonds better than anybody in the state, Cord Maxwell.
Hey, and Kevin and I can do it together. Cord Maxwell, Polsinelli firm, working on behalf of the KU team. We're actually at the very beginning, Commissioner, and I think that's what the city manager was saying, of a very, very beginning. We're not even in the gates of the formal process, right? The formal process of star bonds is creating first a district, right, where it's just the land area that you are going to put in the star bond. And then second, there's a project plan. The project plan is actually where all of the financials come in, where all of the negotiations, where everything that we're talking about here, that all comes into play there. The actual first step that you go through is just saying, does this land area qualify, and does the project, the thing we're building, does it fit in under the statute, right? So if we move forward tonight, the next step then, formally in the legal process, is actually to move into the district phase of this. And that district phase, when you go through that, the city would take action to call a public hearing 30, 45 days later. And then before you can have that public hearing that night, you have to get a letter from the Secretary of Commerce that says that is an eligible area, I agree, before it allows the city to take action on that area. You go into the next phase that happens after a district is created, and then you start working through all of those negotiations, all of those numbers, all of those components, and all of that plan approval. And that takes both, again, the approval of the city and the Secretary of Commerce through that to be able to do it. So it's a multi-step phase that takes months of us all working together. We're before any of that is either started, of just getting your consultants hired so that we can begin working through all of that process.
Thanks, Corb. And again, Kevin Wimpy with Gilmore and Bell representing the city. So thanks for that, Corb. Just to embellish a little bit, Commissioner, that there are multiple phases of approval from the state, from the Department of Commerce, as Corb just went through. And counting the public hearings going forward of the list of incentives under TIF, Star Bond, and CID, should the city choose to proceed, the minimum statutory hearings to get from today to approving the final step would be 5 more public hearings over the course of months and months. And before that, there's attendant public notices published in the paper, resolutions calling the public hearing. The Star Bond and TIF Bond Act in particular are procedurally intensive and require all that. And if most of this group will recall the crossing project off of Iowa that's been mentioned a few times tonight that involved a couple of those incentives. And I think it was about a calendar year between where we are today until getting to final approval of an agreement. And so these types of procedural elements do play out over the course of many months. So again, this is day 0. And should you choose to proceed tonight, we'd set out a calendar and try to hit those dates. But again, it's a procedurally intensive process that would play out over months.
Commissioner, did I hear you ask, though, can the state go without us? I mean, that was what I was hearing.
My comment was with the reverse. The reverse was if the state said, nope, we don't think it qualifies, then we're done on Star Bonds, right? I mean, that's one of the questions I've gotten in the public. The state has to say yes to Star Bonds. We can't force the state. So, but I didn't know if we had to say yes first and then they said yes second, or I thought they had to go first. So, yeah, that was what I was asking. Yeah.
So procedurally. Okay.
And Mayor, I just had one quick question. Thank you. That was very informative. Just to kind of one that was brought up in regards to stormwater, I heard there was going to be a traffic study and then also a parking study. I just wanted to go ahead and ask a representative from KU and about a stormwater study as well. I would assume that, some sort of study was of that method would be occurring. So I just wanted to confirm that.
I'm not trying to answer on behalf of them, but in the interim period of time, they have to comply with all of our stormwater regulations. And as you know, we're very proud of a major watershed study that's right in this area that will be calculating and contemplating any impacts that there might be. My understanding, however, is we're replacing a completely impervious parking lot with buildings that are also impervious. So it is a net. There's no net contribution on stormwater, and we're doing a massive project to correct a long time lack of infrastructure for that. And before we would approve projects, we would make sure that we were signing off on their dealing with any stormwater issues. We still control that.
Good, and that kind of falls into kind of what I was thinking as well, that there will be other departments looking at this as well, and that to kind of make sure it works for the best interests of the city.
Right, absolutely.
And does it really impact our timing on the Jayhawk watershed project, or no?
It will. What Jayhawk Watershed project is going as planned. I think we're going to try and sequence things so that it makes the most sense for as far as limiting disruption to the neighborhood and to businesses. Also to make sure that we're in the right sequence with the construction projects that'll be on there. So lots of conversations have already started taking place with that to try and coordinate it. But obviously, when we get a full project schedule with the Phase 2 project as it goes forward, then that would be highly coordinated.
Okay, thanks.
I know I posed this question before, and I just want to pose it again since we have some more subject matter experts here. Hypothetically, if a smart bond district was approved by Commerce for this particular location, and let's say 5 years from now, we have someone that comes up to us and proposes another Star Bond district project, does a project with the university, does that impact our ability to go before Commerce with another Star Bond project if we're in agreement with, if we're only 5 years into a possible 20-year plus agreement with another Star Bond project?
Yep. Great question, Commissioner. Under the current Star Bond Act, one piece of ground gets one chance for a Star Bond. There's no ability to create a second Star Bond district where one has previously appeared. I think that's the simplest way to answer that, right?
But
then in the city as a whole,
Correct. If you're talking on where the current footprint is proposed for this Star Bond district, one time, but
one time only.
elsewhere in the city where a Star Bond district hasn't been created for, which is the balance of the city, sure, you could consider another Star Bond project.
And there's no time, no lag time in between as far as applying, and it's just based on the decision of Commerce?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Very good. Any other questions?
I guess I just make a comment. Knowing this is day zero, I think I like that analogy. Normally we put these on consent agendas. We did one last week on consent agenda for the Reuter building because that's how early we are in the process. And obviously this is a big process, and I'm glad we're talking about it tonight. But I do think that for the public watching or people asking questions, normally this is a consent agenda item that just barely starts the project, and we're not even discussing, we didn't discuss last week what they might do at Reuters or anything like that. So this is really is day zero, and I think there's a lot of questions, a lot of things to negotiate, a lot of, I have lots of thoughts about, the district and streets and, and all those things that people have brought up. I think the neighborhood groups will have a lot to say, and I think they'll be involved and they should be involved in this process. But if we don't start the process tonight, we can never get there. So I'm certainly going to support starting the process and knowing that, I don't know what Kevin said, at least 5 more times we'll get to talk about this, if not more than 5 times in the next year or so. So for those interested, stay tuned because we'll have a lot more conversation going forward.
Good. Thank
I
you.
just have a quick question. Just one last question, because it kind of popped up, and I didn't answer it for a constituent. CIP impacts. Would this projects like this could potentially have impacts on our CIP projects moving forward?
Yes. A couple of things, our road and transportation network, we're going to see more load. We'll look at that as a traffic study. It's been alluded to, a parking study as well. But the traffic study, we already have data on what they projected on the stadium, that we talked about. It's slightly smaller number of seats and those peak demands. But the traffic generation, we do have projections, I think, off of what is expected off of the hotel and the housing that would be included there. So that's just the transportation part. We've talked about stormwater, and that would be calculated on as well. We would look at all the other infrastructure. Sewer and water are both, things that we have good systems on. I would note that, KU is a utility payer, so they don't pay property taxes, but they do pay for their consumption of sewer and water services, and so we would analyze what the impacts are on those. But we've been planning for those larger loads on our treatment systems, so I think we're in pretty good shape with those. But yeah, those would all be the types of things that we'd be analyzing when we're looking at our CIP. Luckily, I think we've been pretty forward-looking on load, so we have I think a pretty good feeling about our capacity to handle that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
No, just a comment. I think the question by Vice Mayor Finkeldye really helped in terms of the length of the process and where we are in the process. That have helped to kind of flesh it out a little bit more. So the fact that we're going to have quite a few more hearings and opportunities to have it in front of us, or encouraging, so that people will have the opportunity to go ahead and comment on it. So, it's we are at the beginning of this process, and to actually get us to a point where we'll be able to negotiate or figure out exactly what will be the end product. We actually have to start the process. So, I would be in favor of doing that.
Yeah, I concur.
Yeah, I'm in favor of allowing the application to go through. I think anybody who wants to come forward and submit an application, they have a right to do that. However, I heard several things tonight, red flags, what I'd call red flags that I heard that would give me pause about moving forward, depending on how it comes out in the next 5 times we get a chance to take a look at this. So, but I'm okay with the application right now.
Okay. Any other comments or motion?
I move to accept an application from the University of Kansas for Phase 2 of the Gateway District Project to finance renovations to the south and east portions of David Booth Memorial Football Stadium through establishment of a tax increment financing district, a community improvement district, and an issuance of sale tax and revenue bonds, STAR bonds, and authorize the city manager to execute a funding agreement with the University of Kansas to pay the city's expenses associated with the evaluation of the application.
Second.
Okay, moved by Vice Mayor Finkelstein, seconded by Commissioner Littlejohn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those
Nay.
opposed? Is that a nay?
Nay.
Okay, great. Motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Sellers in the negative.
Point of, can we, it's not the negative, it's in
Nay.
opposition, so
Nay.
just can we use
Nay.
proper parliamentary grammar? Thank you.
Nay.
Not a negative person.
No. In the affirmative, or what word would you like to say? Nay?
The opposition.
The opposition.
That's
Thank you very much.
good parliamentary speak.
I will amend my proper speech patterns accordingly. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Negative is not a good thing.
No, that's connotations.
All right, thanks very much. Any other, if anybody wants to leave the room while we move on to the next item, you're free to do so. All right, the next item on the agenda is to receive a presentation and consider approving changing the name of the Parks and Recs Department to the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Culture. Luis, please.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Luis Ruiz, Director of Parks, Recreation, Art, and Culture. Hopefully saying that for the last time. Today we're going to be, is it the full presentation out there? Give me a sec. Thank you. As has been customary for a little while now, champions of outcomes and commitments have been coming and presenting on those outcomes. As Director of Parks, Recreation, Art, and Culture, I'm the champion for the outcome of unmistakable identity. And today I come before you for 2 purposes. One is to talk about the culture in Lawrence and how that contributes and has contributed in the past to our cultural identity and unmistakable identity, and then also to talk about and infuse it a little bit with history. And my counterpart here, my
Trustee assistant.
Trustee assistant is going to talk a little bit about the history of culture in Lawrence and how we're moving forward. And then the second purpose for this is to propose an official name change for the department and get permission to go ahead and start using that and make changes to the code where necessary. So a little bit of how well, I guess I already talked about. I should always start with the table of content, or with the agenda and not the cover. So we talked about this already. So. But what we have been talking about as champions is how we fit into the city strategic plan. And what we have in front of you is kind of the framework for the strategic plan, where we have 5 outcomes, which is what the city does. We are under unmistakable identity, as I mentioned, and within that, we have the 6 commitments that we crosswalk with. So I'll go over that. You've seen the crosswalk, but I'll take a little bit of a different spin on that. But in essence, what unmistakable identity in that outcome states is that Lawrence is a welcoming community, synonymous with arts, diverse culture, fun, and a quintessential downtown. City parks and community events contribute to the vibrancy experienced by all people in Lawrence. And I intentionally made some of these, I guess, adjectives or nouns, sorry, that's a long time ago grammar, bold, so that we can see how culture fits into unmistakable identity. Now, as you've seen in the past, we do interact between, or what we call crosswalk, between outcomes and commitments. This is a general view of how all our commitments and all our outcomes interact. But what I've done is that I've gone into Parks and Recreation, or I'm sorry, Unmistakable Identity, and I created the same kind of graphic for our outcomes and where we cross over. And for this presentation, the light blue numbers here are those areas that address specifically art and culture. And how we measure those are by the 14 KPIs that we measure our progress through. Of those 14 KPIs, which are illustrated here, the light blue ones are 7 of them really relate to art and culture and capturing and moving the needle on how we provide that as a service to our residents and visitors. So I'll dig in a little deeper here, and here are the 7 outcomes that we do measure. So in community engagement, UI2, UI stands for unmistakable identity, and our KPI number 2. We're looking to measure the number of residents who are satisfied specifically with the arts and cultural opportunities within that we offer. For efficient and effective processes, UI3 and UI4, we're looking to measure both residents and non-residents, residents who have visited either events that we have identified as staples of our community and ones that measure a variety of and types of events, diverse events, as well as some of our UI partners, which are listed up there. So we're trying to capture how well we deliver that service of culture and cultural enrichment and arts. And then we have and I'll go back out here just to again give you a reference of what we're looking at. So there is 1 under this commitment, 2 under this commitment, 2 under equity and inclusion, 1 under sound fiscal stewardship, none under engaged and empowered teams, and then another 1 in environmental sustainability. So again, just going back through those, we are trying to also measure and move the needle on percentage of Black or BIPOC, let's use that term, residents rating the community as welcoming, as well as those residents who believe that their culture is celebrated. And now, it's important to note, and we work with, as we're working through these commitments, as UI, we're working with those commitment champions in order to define what these are. What should our measures of success be, and what should our benchmarks be? So, and we're going deeply into those conversations right now as we're ending the year here and entering into the new year. So we're meeting, and I'll share this for the executive team and the commitment and outcome champions. We're actually meeting. I've had 3 meetings this week to talk about how we cross over, how we most effectively resource what we're trying to do, and how we report on it. And then, again, sound fiscal stewardship. This really speaks to economic impact and number of residents who are coming from outside of Lawrence and bringing either additional tax dollars or bed tax, TGT dollars to the community. And for a few of these, the ones that count residents and non-residents, we're working with Explore Lawrence through a platform called Placer AI that can give us pretty accurate counts and demographics, home addresses, where they're coming, hotspots, service levels that we're maybe having gaps in. So there's a way to analyze that in partnership with them. And then, of course, environmental sustainability. I'm sorry, I have to move this. And then we're talking about the number of events that celebrate or enhance our environmental sustainability. So again, out of those 14 total KPIs, 7 of them have to do in some way, shape, or form with culture, arts and culture, cultural heritage, celebration of culture. So what we're hoping to do today is, again, express how that culture has been woven into the fabric of Lawrence and how we feel that we best identify through a department name. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Porter, who has some good background.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Porter Arneal, Assistant Director, Parks, Recreation, Arts and Culture. I'm really pleased to be here to talk about this because, of course, I came in 2015 specifically for arts and culture. And as part of that, the cultural plan was underway. And I always refer back to the research that great consultants did. And one of those pieces was this question number 5 in the survey that they conducted citywide: which arts, culture, and heritage sites are important for Lawrence to offer, whether you go or not? So whether you're involved or not, which ones are important? They had 23 things listed. You can see that they're all listed by zip code. What's really interesting is that all 23 scored above 2.5 out of 4, so that there's a leaning into this is really important stuff. And then 18 of the 24 actually scored above 3. So, that when I got here, everybody said, this is an arts town. So this kind of proved it to me, and I appreciated that. So I'd like to start there. Oops. And then, of course, as you probably all know, Lawrence has a steadfast commitment to the arts and is reflected in its remarkable milestones and achievements over the years. In 1973, the Cultural Arts Commission was established. In 1975, the Lawrence Arts Center was founded, which was originally housed in the Carnegie Building before it landed in its own new building. In 1986, the city established the public art policy, which was really very visionary at the time, especially for a relatively small city, and launched the Outdoor Downtown Sculpture Exhibition, which has brought 360 sculptures and artworks to public spaces downtown and citywide. In 1991, the Community Arts Grant Program was created, which over the years has provided 240 grants totaling $339,000 in awards to support local artists and organizations. In 1991, Lawrence became the first city in Kansas to adopt a percent for art resolution, allocating funds from public projects to commission public art, resulting in 25 permanent public artworks around the city currently. In 1996, the Phoenix Awards were established to celebrate outstanding achievements in the arts, honoring 155 award recipients and commissioning 20 original artworks, or 20 original artists by local artists. In 2002, the Lawrence Arts Center moved to its current city-owned location, significantly expanding its capacity to serve the community. In 2010, Final Fridays was launched, creating a vibrant monthly event that highlights the work of local artists and connects the community to the arts. In 2015, the Cultural Arts Commission completed the citywide cultural plan, which I was referencing, which was received by the City Commission, providing a strategic framework for cultural growth and sustainability. 2015, the Cultural Arts Commission also developed a new mural review criteria, which helps with professional development for artists that are interested in doing murals as well. So it's not just a simple document, but it gives background information to them. 2017, the city completed the Arts and Economic Prosperity Study, which was actually Douglas County and the city, has been beneficial for us. In 2022, Lawrence received a $150,000 NEA grant for COVID-19 recovery assistance, which benefited 17 local arts agencies. 2023, Lawrence began integrating and embedding arts and culture as part of the Parks and Recreation Department, which is why we're here. And in 2023, Lawrence joined the Kansas Arts Commission, the Lawrence Music Alliance, to conduct the first music census in the state to examine and understand the local music ecology. So lots of good stuff. I'm actually taking panels to the Kansas Recreation and Parks Association that'll happen the end of January. So we're actually taking a leadership position in this, and I'm finding peers across the state that either are doing arts or are interested in doing arts as part of Parks and Recreation. So this is a turn, in some of the studies we've done, we've seen this more and more in other cities as well. And then the master plan that we've been working on, 18 months or so now, is almost complete. We plan to bring it early next year to you all to receive it. In it, there's a matrix of different recommendations that the consultants developed through a lot of community engagement. Some of the highlighted ones are strengthen cultural programming with partnerships, expanded arts and culture grants, develop signature city events, greater collaboration on special cultural events, formalize the public art program, engaging in an indigenous community in arts and culture, outdoor event space, support affordable housing for artists. That's a unique opportunity to bring creatives to Lawrence. And some sort of landmark art, which is always interesting too. And you probably know of the Sky Stations in Kansas City that gets seen on Monday Night Football a lot. So anyway, that's my section of the, oh, do I have one more? So culture strengthens the impacts of our Parks and Recreation Department by creating a more integrated, culturally vibrant environment for the community. This includes cultural spaces in parks, which we see a lot from our events. And through our surveys for the master plan, it's very clear that people want more events, not less events. And we want our events to represent our equity, our culture, our fun, our uniqueness, and of course, our unmistakable identity. Recreation is a cultural engagement. Events that combine physical activity with cultural expression. We're seeing that as well. Collaborative partnerships, supporting community programs through joint initiatives with unmistakable identity partners and grant recipients. We work a lot with our TGT grant recipients and our community arts grant recipients. Much more than people probably realize. It's not just the grant, but we're actually engaged with them and helping them with their marketing and other things. And assuming industry leadership position, and that's what I mentioned with the Kansas Recreation and Parks Association, bringing 2 panels to them and talking about arts and culture as part of Parks and Recreation. And we're, of course, exploring further opportunities at the National Recreation and Parks Association as well.
Thank you. Okay, well, I know most of you know Roger, and he helped do a little bit of this research. So I'm going back a little bit in history, talking about where a department has evolved from and how it evolved as a Parks and Recreation department. So in 1940, there was a volunteer recreation council. They pretty much organized recreation programs. And in 1945, the Kansas Recreation Enabling Act was enacted, and it provided tax support recreation programs, which led to the formation in 1945 of the Lawrence Recreation Commission. Now, that was terminated in 1965 with the passage of the Land and Water Fund Act of 1965, which allowed for Lawrence Parks and Recreation Department to be created in 1966. And is currently codified as LPRD, or Lawrence Parks and Recreation Department. So and again, 1965, this allowed the fund allowed for the great expansion that we saw in our park systems. It also allowed for building of recreation facilities, which hadn't existed prior to that. So the city took advantage of those things and created the department, a standalone department. So now in 2022, as Porter mentioned, he was added to our department, and the department name just magically evolved to Parks, Recreation, Art, and Culture. And I think that was through some documents, some of the consultant studies that we were going through. They were just combining both department names without really going through a process of justification or going through commissions or our art commission or our advisory board, which we felt that it was time for us to do that. I will say that, right now, like I mentioned there, we have the 2 advisory boards we ran it through. I will say that we are partial to the name we have picked. We don't I don't think Parks, Recreation, Art, and Culture really ever flowed. It never grabbed its hooks. Assistant Director for Parks, Recreation, Art, and Culture just does not flow. And we also, and I'm going to say that that's, the proposed name change here is the spoiler alert, that we feel that, dropping the name Art just not only makes it feel a little bit more inclusive of what culture is, and which does not negate art. Having the word art in the name, I think maybe differentiates art from culture a little bit more. We have to define it more, and we also want to give honor to those organizations that are truly arts organizations within the community, but feel that the word culture continues to demonstrate our support for the arts. We feel that the word culture continues to, or will continue to support the city's heritage and culture. It allows us to move forward. It allows us to incorporate, engage, and embrace new cultural initiatives. So for all those reasons, I'm going to stop saying the word culture. We really feel that that is the appropriate name. We have gone to both advisory boards that we serve. Actually, the Parks and Rec Advisory Board on 2 weeks ago, I guess, voted to recommend this to the commission, the name change. And then we went to the Arts Commission last week on the 11th, or actually they were both last week, and they also voted after some, I think, very constructive conversation. So what we're asking of the commission today, with all this considered about the history of art and culture, how we support it, how we want to support it, how we want to continue to engage with our cultural partners and our residents in celebrating culture, that the commission received this presentation and consider approving the name change from Parks Recreation to the Parks Recreation and Culture Department. So in short, that would be PRC. We would be known fully as the City of Lawrence Parks Recreation Culture and Cultural Department, but we feel that PRC not only plays on the word, on the term parks, which is often used to describe the whole of what we do, which includes recreation as well. And that's it. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions that you might have.
Any question for Luis or Porter? Anybody?
Okay.
So dropping art, excuse me.
Oh, yes.
Oh, that's okay. I just want to make sure you never thought about rearranging the letters and make the acronym PARC? That way it's Park and Park, or?
No, we thought about that, believe me. But again, I think for all the other reasons, we think, art means so many different things to so many different people, that I think it sends more of a mixed message than us really claiming this is how we contribute. We contribute through parks, we contribute through recreational programs, and we contribute through supporting and engaging in cultural initiatives.
I like the idea. Thought it was curious.
Yeah, no, we thought of every combination.
Yeah, I bet you did.
Yes.
Years of this, so.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Okay, public comment?
Can you hop up there and stop sharing that?
Oh, sure. I can do that.
Thanks.
Oh.
Thanks, Kurt.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Hey, Pat Peary, I just wanted to stand up and compliment our City Parks Department for the fine job they do in the city. It's highly regarded. The compliments are well-deserved. We appreciate what you do. Particularly, I'll call out the meeting that was held last night concerning Water Tower Park. My reports from our neighborhood representatives that attended that meeting were very complimentary. We appreciate that. Water Tower Park is near our neighborhood, connected by the secret sidewalk across University Avenue to our neighborhood, and it's a very important part of our neighborhood, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat?
appreciate the work Porter's done, but here's the thing. If you guys are going to add culture to this, Porter mentioned cultural expression. A homeless person named V had a family heirloom that was her grandfather's that was lost during one of your sweeps. Is that going to be part of your cultural concerns? Or are we just talking shit again? I mean, really, if we're going to change it to culture, let's respect actually people's culture and not just the ones that we prefer. Because that's what happens, is if your cultural expression is acceptable, then you're okay. And now you mentioned the word expression. Now you're venturing off into that constitutionally protected First Amendment area, guys. Do you realize that? Seriously. How many lawsuits do you guys face right now for your prejudicial treatment of the First Amendment? And you're going to name this cultural expression? You're going to use the word expression with it? I'm already thinking of ways to test this and to test your patience. Because there's a number of people in this town that are tired of being treated like they're second-class citizens just because people don't like them, don't like the things that they say. But you're going to focus on culture, so let's focus on culture. You have a culture of intimidation, and you have a culture of improper impropriety. I don't even know what to call it. But your culture is to have people out here talking in the middle of the meeting when I'm trying to hear. Nobody makes a move to help. I have to take care of that myself and embarrass the fuck out of them and make them leave the building. I've been threatened with arrest, you motherfuckers, for being too loud in that room.
Any other public comment in the room? Okay, how about online?
No, Mayor.
All right, thank you.
Someone did just raise their hand.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you for bringing them in.
If you want to go ahead and let them.
Yes, please.
Jeffrey Hepler?
Hey, thank you all. Jeffrey Hepler, 66044. I was going to let it go. I just, yeah, if you're going to add culture to it, I think there's a lot of potential. As a landscaper, I appreciate the work that Parks and Rec does in beautifying our city. I think they work really hard on some really difficult landscapes. But if you're going to add culture to it, we need to be representing our indigenous neighbors. We need to be representing our homeless community. We need to be representing all aspects of our community. Thank you.
Jeff. Okay. So I think all we would do is to receive the presentation this evening.
Approve.
We're going to approve the change of the name this evening. Any comments regarding the change of the name and anything to add this evening?
No, yeah, I can see why they made the change. So
Yeah.
I'm on board with it.
Commissioner Sellers, anything to add?
Books for me?
Okay. Okay, well, is there a motion to approve changing the name of Parks and Rec Department?
I'm sure. Receive the presentation, and I move that we receive the presentation and approve the changing of the name of the Parks and Rec Department to the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Culture.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Littlejohn, second by Vice Mayor Finkeldye. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. No one in opposition. Okay.
Thank you all for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much, you guys. Any commission items? None for you? Okay. Anybody want to talk about the future agenda?
I had one question. I thought we had on here at one point, discussion on the tobacco ordinance. Was it on the future agenda items at one time and got removed?
Well, we have.
It's on.
The city manager.
I know we've got that, that's the proximity one, but I thought they were going to give us an update. The health department was going to give us an update on the program as a whole.
They did do that.
They
They
did.
did? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Got it.
This is a deja vu.
Anything else? All right. City manager's report.
Thanks, Mayor. There are several follow-up items on here. The first is reporting on the payment arrangements that we will start doing on the 23rd of December, like several other utilities. And so a lot of hard work on making that work and getting that into effect this year. So proud to update that. Also, following up on some information we said we'd share on the Jayhawk watershed project, which we talked about a couple times tonight. Also, we're submitting a pretty ambitious RAISE grant, so we're very hopeful that that's going to propel us forward quicker, much quicker on an important thing that we've talked about here over the last few months and gave a presentation on, so we're hopeful on that one. And then follow up on the questions related to the density of tobacco retailers.
Any questions on those items from anybody on the commission?
I had a question regarding the information received about the TRL and the density. There, in the memo, there was a note, or let's see, that last paragraph where it says, without a study of existing tobacco retail establishment locations, the standards may have the unintended consequences of creating a ban instead of a use restriction, which may have legal ramifications. I get that point. I guess my question would be, and I don't know if we have anybody from the health department on, but to answer, at least to answer to that, like, what does it take? You know, what is the timeline as far as providing a study? What would that look like so that we can maybe find some rest or reconciliation to, do we need to have them come back? Is it worth having another discussion about the ordinance? So that's my question.
Do believe Jonathan is on.
Jonathan's up?
Hey.
Okay, good.
Hey, can you all hear me okay? All right. Hello, everyone. This is Jonathan Smith, Executive Director of Lawrence Douglas County Public Health. We're essentially ready to present whenever you all want to have us for a work session or an agenda item to discuss this. Really, the next step for us would be for the commission to take action on some of our recommendations as far as proximity and density goes. So we have all the data ready to go. It's just a matter of whether that's a work session or an agenda item, we're pretty much ready to roll. And this would be to address some of the issues like with proximity in relation to schools, proximity in relation to each other. We have all that data, at least for 2023, ready to go. We're still collecting data for 2024 because we're still doing compliance checks and things like that. But for 2023, we feel like we have enough data to make a recommendation to you all.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
The answer is part of it. I know we've had discussions back and forth with how do we operationalize our county improvement plan and what relationship it plays with our strategic plan. And I think we don't really have full discussions about that. I don't even think we've had a discussion about the health improvement plan that went live this summer. So, you know, for me, I think as we continue to move forward and we have these guiding documents and we talk about what role do they play in our strategic plan, if they do,
then we need to give ourselves the opportunity to have those discussions. So I'm not opposed. I don't know if we need an agenda item right now, because I don't know if we as a commission have consensus on what that is. But I'm not opposed to us, whether it comes as under outcome or just a plain work session, to truly understand what is it, what the health department has presented to us. And it seems that we have an impact on that. But is there deeper avenues to this? What role do we, that the health department perceives that this has in the strategic plan? But also, is there guidance within the CHIP, which is the county's plan for us collectively, and what relationship does those two have as far as us and what we do as a commission in setting policies?
So could we do a joint meeting? Is that possible, either via Zoom or over?
Or an agenda item?
For them to talk about it? With the county, I mean?
I don't think this is a county piece. I think this is from the health department. So this is a public health piece.
Right.
So are we talking about, this is something where this is rising to a public health piece that has policy within the city. So you have the health department guiding this and saying that this is of importance. I'm open to hearing and understanding what that importance is as it relates to the health improvement plan. Because we need to take a look at that and see if there's anything in there that draws down to our strategic plan or has any relationship with our strategic plan. So I feel like this is a deja vu conversation that we've had before.
It's possible.
There's just this idea that we have a health improvement plan that plays a role in how we guide policy. We have our strategic plan that speaks to our outcomes. If there's overlap, then I feel like we need to address that. If there isn't, then we leave it go. But we haven't had a proper presentation of the health improvement plan. And as someone that's rolling off of that steering committee, the one thing I would like for us to see, at least have that, so that we know what we're talking about and the relationship it has to the policies that we drive through our strategic plan. So
Sure.
Well, as the person rolling onto that committee,
yes.
I'd be happy to have that discussion. I mean, I've read the plan, I knew it was coming, but we have not had a presentation to us about that. So I think putting that on the calendar as a work session or whatever would be.
So start with us, a work session for us, so that Jonathan can present some of the information that we were talking about, and then also maybe coalesce it with the CHIP that you're speaking of, to make sure there's not any, make sure there is overlap, or if there is overlap, we need to identify it. And
I think it gives us reference to
Yeah.
understand how do we move forward with
Okay.
this, if we believe we need to. So I don't want to put anything in the mouths of the brains of commissioners. I think we make policies based on our information, whether it's Plan 2040, our strategic plan, master plans. This is another living document that we should reference that has importance on the people that we serve. So that we appoint someone from the commission to be a part of. So we need to hear that out.
I'd be in favor of it, Mayor, I'd be in favor of it being a work session item.
I'm sorry, but I'm not clear what the work session item is supposed to be on for the minute.
Presentation of the health improvement plan.
That's not this specific tobacco density.
No.
Okay, thank you.
got it. But he could give us that information at the same time, since he mentioned he's ready to present some of this to us.
You may pose a question in reference to it.
Yeah, okay,
But I think a work session on the county health improvement plan.
yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, like I said, we do have all the data that we have ready to present to you all, because we do have some recommendations on changing that ordinance. Ultimately, we'd like for you all to change it. So however you wanted to do that, if we can talk about them at the same time, we're willing and ready to do whatever.
Okay. Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, public comment on the city manager's report?
Can I just ask, do you have a time frame when you're wanting this to come back?
Well, it looks like the agenda's, I mean, we could put it somewhere
Sometime
in
in
the next
Q1,
couple of months.
next 60 days. 90 days?
It's like that much.
90 days. So,
Yeah,
That'd be
One.
fine with me.
yeah.
Got it, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam.
Please, Michael, if you,
You guys have had a number of people come in here and talk about their water bills over the last few months, and they've talked to you about the difficulties that they've had getting people to listen to them. Do you guys remember these people that have come in here and talked to you? Y'all remember that, right? Amber, Bart, you guys remember these people that came in here and spoke to you about their water bills being a problem? He just gave you a city manager's report that talks about the payment arrangements that they're making with, I'm assuming it's the water bill, since that's really the only utility we operate. Why didn't any of you ask him a question about those people that came in here and spoke to you? And then you guys wonder why we think we don't matter? Wasn't even me. I think the guy's name was Isaiah that came in here and talked. And then there was another one a couple weeks after him that came in and talked about how their water bills were so far out of line and they couldn't get any help from the city to get it resolved. Do you remember this? I see one head up there shaking. Two, the rest of you don't remember this. That's why you shouldn't be commissioners anymore. Because you should be asking him how those got taken care of and whether those people got taken care of. Those are your fucking constituents, guys. And this is why we are here. This is why we are so passionate about this, is because you don't represent everybody in the community when you're in this room. Otherwise, you would ask him those questions. Those people took the time to come in here and express their problems to you, hoping that you would change them. Hoping that you would step in and try to help alleviate the problem a little bit. The same way I did in 2021 and 22. Y'all remember that? Before I started cussing and raising hell in here? Motherfuckers, you just don't get it, do you? When you ignore the people that come to this podium and you do not ask the questions, you alienate the public. Ask him the question before we're done tonight.
Hi, I'm Chris Flowers. I came here to talk about the tobacco report. Y'all act like vape shops are targeting kids, but if you really want to talk about who's really targeting kids, how about junk food? Y'all act like it's bad for elementary kids to have a vape shop near like Schwegler Elementary, but what about the Baskin Robbins right across from the vape shop? I ask you, which store that sells products that are unhealthy for kids do you think targets kids more? The Smoker's Vape Shop or the Baskin Robbins ice cream shop? Or would you argue that ice cream sundaes are health food? And I bring this up because it infuriates me. It infuriates me that we have at least one city commissioner that I've seen through their past social media postings that they're like, oh, they heart bodily autonomy. But what you all are doing, I ask, is limiting the number of vape shops in an effort to make it harder for citizens to obtain tobacco products supportive of bodily autonomy, or is this supportive of government officials forcing health decisions on individuals that should be left up to themselves and their doctors should they choose to involve any health experts? This is the exact opposite of body autonomy. Trying to, well, okay, let's say it's this way. If government limited the number of abortion providers, but they're like, well, it's not denying abortions, you'd all say that's BS. You're doing that to stop abortions. And what you all are doing, you're doing it to stop people from smoking. These are adults. They have the right to put whatever they want in their bodies. The war on drugs is a war on body autonomy. And this is more of the war on drugs. And you bring up the kids, because that's what you always do when it comes to the war on drugs. You bring up the kids. But and I'm just saying, I never see elementary kids going into the smoker's shop over by Schwegler. I work over there. I see them go into Baskin Robbins. I know who y'all make winners and y'all make losers. You choose the winners, you choose the losers. I'll just say that. Thank you.
thanks, Chris.
My name is Dr. Justin Spees. Speaking of abortion, in August of 2022, Kansas voted not to ban abortion. Imagine that. Red state, Kansas, had a chance first in the country to ban abortion and voted not to. And it wasn't even close. It was 60-40. Here in Douglas County, liberal Douglas County, it was even worse, 82% to 18%. The other day, on December 14th, the Lawrence Times wrote an article titled, "Kansas provided more abortions in 2023 than ever before, mostly for out-of-state patients." The article says, "More abortions occurred in Kansas in 2023 than ever before in the state's recorded history, driven by a surge of patients living in nearby states with abortion bans." A vital statistics report released Friday by the Kansas Department of Health and Environment said 19,467 abortions occurred in Kansas in 2023. It's horrifying. It's truly, truly horrifying. The 2023 figure represents a 58% increase from the 12,318 abortions recorded in 2022 and a 148% increase from the 7,849 recorded in 2021. The 2023 report shows that less than a fourth of the patients who received abortions at Kansas clinics were in-state residents. Texans made up the largest portion of patients, followed by Kansans, Oklahomans, Missourians, and Arkansans. More than 9 in 10 abortions occurred before the 13th week of pregnancy. None happened after 22 weeks, which is the legal limit in Kansas. That's 5.5 months. Imagine how horrifying that is to see an abortion at 22 weeks. Imagine how horrifying it is for that baby. Kansas started reporting yearly abortion figures in 1971. The previous record was set in 1973 when the state recorded 12,612 procedures. In an email, the anti-abortion lobbying group Kansans for Life called the increase of abortions last year, quote, "heartbreaking." The surge of abortions in Kansas is a heartbreaking reminder of the abortion industry's relentless targeting of vulnerable women who are no longer protected by enforceable informed consent laws or basic abortion facility inspection and safety standards. The group's communications director, Danielle Underwood, said, "In 2022, Kansas voters overwhelmingly rejected an anti-abortion ballot measure that would have enabled state lawmakers to severely restrict or ban the procedure. The 3 new clinics have opened in Kansas in response to the increasing demand from out-of-state residents in Kansas City, Kansas in 2021, in Wichita in 2022, and in Pittsburgh in August." So, congratulations, Kansas. Congratulations, all you Republicans that voted for it as well. 19,467 babies are dead in 1 year.
Thank you. Any other public comment on the city manager's report?
I'm sorry, is this general public
No,
comment
this is the
time?
city manager's report, general
Okay.
public comment. Anybody else have any general public comment on the city manager's report? Okay, any online?
Julie Jones. Hi, Julie Jones. I'm sorry, are we at general public comment now?
City manager's report.
That's what I thought, so the topics were kind of all over the place. I'll wait, thank you.
Thank you. Any other city manager's report comments?
I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. I think that'll do for now. Commission calendars, items, anybody to talk about on the commission calendar?
I don't know how many might attend, but I know in the past we've had the chamber annual meeting on the calendar. I think it's January 31st. So it might be worth noting on the calendar.
January 31st.
Yeah.
You could add that, please. Thank you. Anything else we need to add that you see that's missing?
Do we know when local government day is for Kansas League of Municipalities?
I think it's January 22nd. I think I saw an email today
Yeah.
about that. I think it's January 22nd.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and end our live broadcast and let anybody who wants to leave now do so. Otherwise, we're going to move to open public comment in a few minutes, or in about 30 seconds.
There we go.